Greetings, humans. You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
How's it, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Command Zone podcast. I'm your host, Josh Lee Kwai.
And I'm Murph. Hello again.
Murph is here filling in for Jimmy. Murph is our resident MTG hipster, so it's good to have you for a set review. Going to bring your perspective.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to talk about some awesome cards today and hopefully some really cool interactions.
Yeah. Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. It is right around the corner. So we are today looking at the multicolored commanders, legendary creatures from the set. There are 15 of them. There's a bunch of cool stuff you can do, but before we talk about it, before we break it all down, we got to talk about our sponsors, channelfireball.com/command. That's the place you want to go to order your Magic product, singles, anything at all. Of course, we're talking about Neon Dynasty and all of that stuff, the sealed product, the pre-orders for all the singles. It is available for order on the Channel Fireball Marketplace. You know you want to pick up this stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff we're talking about. Also, all the cards we're going to talk about that go with all these commanders, you can order all of those as singles on the Marketplace. Plus, they have this cool feature where if you forget to put in the affiliate link, you can just type in code COMMAND at checkout and still apply the affiliate code to the order, which, like we always say, you're going to buy Magic cards anyway. You may as well just support the content you enjoy. Help us keep the lights on around here while you're doing it.
Affiliate code helps me out a lot. I always forget to do that. And then it's right there. I think, oh yeah, of course, now I can do that. Type in command, boom, there you go. You're good to go.
Even I do that all the time.
I do it all the time.
And then once you get the cards, of course, you want to protect them. You want them to stay in pristine condition. There are so many cool versions of cards now, too. There's the neon ink for the HIDETSUGU card.
Oh, yeah.
There's these cool new showcase frames. If you get that stuff, it's valuable. You want to protect it. UltraPro really does make the products that we use and trust here at the Command Zone to protect our own collections. Jimmy and I have been using them for years and years now of all my decks and Eclipse sleeves. The other cool thing is if you're like me and you really love the art from Neon Dynasty, I mean, this set has art that is, it just looks totally different than anything we've ever seen. Mm-hmm. If you want some of this stuff, UltraPro are the ones that have the license agreements to be able to put that on their sleeves, on the playmats, on their deck boxes and things like that. So if you're going to do the SATORU Crazy Ninjutsu deck, you know, you want the playmat, the sleeves, and the deck box that all match because that'll make your opponents go like, whoa.
Yeah, and the colors pop. Like they look absolutely beautiful.
UltraPro really is the best stuff to protect your stuff. And then, of course, the final way to support all of our content is directly if you go to patreon.com/commandzone. All kinds of cool perks for patrons. We always talk about watching game nights and extra turns earlier than the general public.
It's a plus?
Yeah, which is exciting. There's a Discord server. You can talk with us. Murph's on there, too. We're on there every single day. Recently, also, we've sort of have a thing going on that's a new focus for us this year at the Command Zone, which is giving more exclusive content to patrons. So we've already released 2 videos that are only for our patrons. They're not going to go out on our normal channel. So you can watch those right now if you're at any tier, any support level, but you have to be a patron to see them at all. So if you want to get a hold of, watch some exclusive content, patreon.com/commandzone.
I've watched some of that stuff and it's really good. I think it's pretty cool content and we love you patrons. You've been such a backbone to us for as long as we've had our Patreon since like 2015, 2016, something like that.
I think is when it started. So for years and years, you really kept the lights on, kept us afloat. We appreciate it.
So we want to bring more content to you people. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got lots of plans for exclusive Patreon content for the whole year. So, okay, main topic. Multicolored Commander set review from
Patreon call up.
Oh, we forgot. You're right. Jeez,
Josh, go in order.
Good thing you're here, Murph. Another perk of the Patreon is we shout out one lucky patron every single episode, and this episode is dedicated to Anthony Savage. Anthony, you rock.
Thanks, Anthony. You're the best.
I already did the thing I said I wasn't going to do where the
where you just let it go to sleep.
The tablet goes to sleep. Okay.
All right. We're back.
All right, this is going great. Okay. Multicolored Commander set review from Neon Dynasty. All right, let us
begin.
Well, 2 caveats. We're going to go in alphabetical order. We are not going to talk about the Commander product, legendary creatures. We'll save that for when we do the budget upgrade guides and such. I guess there's 3 caveats. The third is that we may screw up the pronunciation of some of these names. We apologize. We'll do our best.
Yep.
Okay. The first Commander we're going to talk about is
GO-SHINTAI of Life's Origin. It is 3 and a green for legendary enchantment creature Shrine. You can pay Wooburg and tap it to return target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And when GO-SHINTAI of Life's Origin or another non-token shrine enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 colorless shrine enchantment creature token.
Okay, so this is a WUBERG Shrine Commander. I do want to note this is available only in set boosters.
Yes.
This is kind of the, what was it, Lindy? Kind of like that in that mold.
Yeah.
From past sets. Important to note that it also, ETB just makes 2 enchantments.
Yeah, it makes 2 enchantments and 2 creatures, because notably GO-SHINTAI itself is an enchantment creature, and it makes an enchantment creature when it enters, or whenever another shrine enters.
Shrines do trigger on upkeep or first main phase generally, so it will be difficult to sort of take advantage of the fact that you've just gotten 2 shrines.
Yeah, there's some on end step.
There's not very many, though,
Yeah, there's a couple in this set that...
And there's some you activate.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it'll be difficult the turn you play Go-Shintai to get that, because you've spent mana already on playing it, presumably, to get the bonus of like, oh, I suddenly have 2 more shrines. But it continues to make shrines as you play it, pay more shrines, which makes all your shrines better, because shrines generally just care about how many shrines you have.
Yeah. So I think that's the real power behind this card, in that whenever you play a shrine, it automatically just doubles your shrine. You play 1 shrine, you get 2, right?
Yeah. It's like a Panharmonicon almost for shrines. I mean, it doesn't double their ETBs, but it doubles how many shrines you now would normally get for playing the 1.
So I do think that that's very, very powerful. Like, once you have Go-Shintai out, you play a shrine, you now have 2 shrines, then you play another shrine, you now have 4 shrines.
Right. Probably have more, because you probably, yeah.
Oh, and Go-Shintai is a shrine, too.
A shrine, yeah.
So you actually have more than that, which is pretty nutty. So even if you have, like, a halfway decent shrine or 2, like, those effects can start adding up pretty quickly.
Yeah, there's this shrine I know that on your first main, it creates mana equal to the number of shrines that you have.
Yep.
That's a 3-drop. If you're on 4, then you play this. Then your next turn, you're going to get 3 extra mana from that, which is mana to play even more shrines and get going. Seems powerful. Let's talk about Go-Shintai and how to sort of make use of it, what some cards in the deck might be. Blink Flicker was the first thing that we all sort of thought of. So because Go-Shintai's second ability, whenever Go-Shintai or another non-token shrine enters the battlefield, it's not a cast trigger, which is interesting because a lot of enchantment triggers are cast triggers.
Yeah, so you can abuse it with like flicker effects, you can abuse it with like Brago, Yorion, Amanatu, things like that, because this is a 5-color commander, because it has that WUBERG in its casting cost.
Yeah, so you can use any card that could flicker. I think you want mostly stuff that could flicker an enchantment, just in case you don't want to flicker the Go-Shintai, you want to flicker one of the other shrines. That would, a lot of those aren't creatures, so they are a little bit harder to flicker. Of course, you could always flicker Go-Shintai with the creature stuff, but yeah, I like Brago, Yorion, Amanatu. There's the Constellation mechanic, which says whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control,
you do thing X.
Yeah, it's not like Enchantresses, which usually say when you cast an enchantment, draw a card or something like that. So Citizen Champion is kind of the Constellation version of an Enchantress, though. It's 2 and a green for a 1/3, has Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on Citizen Champion and draw a card. So that's probably one of the best cards in the entire deck.
Yeah, especially when you do end up pairing it with those flicker type effects, because you can just mass flicker everything, bring it all back, and then they all enter the battlefield under your control. You can draw a ton of cards, make this thing huge,
even just like place a Citizen Champion on 3, play Go-Shintai, draw 2 cards, put 2/1, because
that seems pretty good. Like, that is base level value right there. You play a card in your deck, then you play your commander,
and then you draw 2 cards and put 2/1 counters.
That is
on
your
the thing.
floor.
Yeah, and every shrine you play from then on draws you 2 cards.
Yeah.
And makes the Citizen Champion bigger. There's also Nessian Wanderer, Archon of Sun's Grace.
Oh, that was so good.
The Archon makes 2/2 flyers when a enchantment ETBs. There's also a Johnny's Chosen, which does not have Constellation, but it has it before that word existed, right? It makes 2/2s.
And again, remember, with Go-Shintai, you're pumping out these shrine tokens as well that count as enchantments. So, like, for all these Constellation triggers, you're getting 2 whenever Go-Shintai or another shrine enters.
Right. So if you have Archon of Sun's Grace out and and Go-Shintai and you play a shrine, then you're going to make that shrine and a shrine token, which are both enchantments, which will make 2/2 flyers.
Exactly. So it can get pretty nutty pretty fast without a lot of work done on your end, honestly.
It can get even nuttier, though, if you can double up that trigger. And I think Panharmonicon is something people might want to think about in this deck. And I actually think that there's better than Panharmonicon would be a Sakashima.
Oh.
So there are 2 Sakashimas, which cost about the same as a Panharmonicon, but if you copy the Go-Shintai, then all of a sudden that's going to make 3 2 shrine tokens, 1 for each Go-Shintai
Yep.
and itself. And then the next time you play a shrine, you'll get 2 shrine tokens from now on rather than... And it makes it so like, okay, if I only have 1 removal spell, I can't just remove 1 of the Go-Shintais
Exactly.
and turn you off.
Yeah. And then once you have cloned it with like Sakashima of 1,000 Faces or something like that, then you can put more clones on top of that and then just keep it snowballing.
Yeah.
Just have a good time.
Just have a good time. Just have fun.
Just have fun. Also, notably, like if you have copy enchantment or something, Go-Shintai is also an enchantment, so you can use clones like that.
Yeah, although
once
it's
you
legendary, so you have to have the Sakashima
Once you have the
out.
Sakashima, yes.
Yeah, because Sakashima gets around the legendary rule. I don't know that I would put a phantasmal image or something like that
Yeah,
in,
probably
just
not.
because I don't want to have to draw Sakashima first.
Yeah.
So I think just 2 Sakashimas are fine.
Yeah.
You know, that'll sort of get you what you need. It's easy to forget the first part of text on the card, which is you pay WUBRG, you tap Go-Shintai, and then you return target enchantment from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Yes.
That is a very powerful ability also. It does cheap mana cost, right? Mm-hmm. In some ways, it's a little like Joda. I mean, if you have Omniscience in there,
Yeah.
you're going to get it out for 5 mana. So I think self-mill is something you're going to want to do. Cycle through your deck, put good enchantments into your graveyard that you can get out later with Go-Shintai.
Uh-huh.
And you're in 5 color, so you have access to sort of all the best self-mill cards in the format.
Yeah, usually in black and red. Yeah, some blue stuff will loot through things as well.
So Faithless Looting, really good. Entomb,
You can pick whatever you want to
can
put in
literally
there.
pick an Omniscience
Yeah,
as an instance on the end step. So they're like, oh, what's in your graveyard? Nothing scary. Okay, I passed the turn to you. On end step, Entomb, Omniscience.
Entomb is very easy to miss,
Yeah.
that it doesn't just tutor creatures. Entomb can get any card and put it into your graveyard. So you can go get that Omniscience, you can go get whatever large scary enchantment you want to, and then instantly reanimate it.
Yep.
It's quite good.
Stitcher Supplier is just a super efficient 1 black mana for a 1/1. Anytime we're talking about self-mill, I feel like we talk about this card. When it enters the battlefield or dies, you mill 3 cards.
It's so good.
Yeah. It's just so efficient. I also think it would be good to have your self-mill on enchantments, right?
Yes.
Because these are going to be things that can be recurred by Go-Shintai. And you're also going to have Setessan Champion and other things that just happen to synergize with enchantments. So Search for Ascanta self-mills you. Titan's Nest. This is a card that
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, this is a card that Jimmy and I were pretty high on, and I've only seen it out a couple of times, but I think this
I've
is
never seen it out, honestly.
It's powerful when it's powerful, but it's more narrow, I think, than we initially thought. But I think this is a spot where it'll be very good. So Titan's Nest is 1 and Sultai, so 4 mana for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may put that card into your graveyard. So it is self-mill. It's a little bit slow.
But it's also selection, which is good.
Yep. Yeah, because you can look and you can choose not to put it in there. If it's not enchantment, maybe you just draw it. Mm-hmm. But then it has a second text. Exile a card from your graveyard. Add colorless mana to your mana pool. Spend this mana only to cast colored spells without X in its mana cost. Or a colored spell without X in its mana cost. So if you're self-milling already, just being like, I'm going to exile these 5 cards to get 5 colors mana to cast more shrines this turn.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the colorless mana obviously can't be used to activate Go-Shintai's ability, but that's fine. You can use it to play basically whatever other enchantments, whatever other cards you need to further your game plan.
And we're under the assumption you're going to add the enchantresses and other things.
Yeah.
You're going to have plenty of cards in hand. Enchantment decks do not have trouble with cards in hand.
Yeah, getting that extra mana, though, is pretty vital.
And then any deck that I can put this next card into, I tend to do it, and it's just an insane card. Jeskai Ascendancy.
I love
think
Jeskai
is
Ascendancy.
Really awesome in this deck. It costs a blue, a red, and a white for an enchantment. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Untap those creatures. Very relevant because Go-Shintai has a tap ability.
Very true.
Also, a lot of the things you're going to be doing is making tokens. Go-Shintai makes tokens. Archon of Sun's Grace makes tokens. But then it also says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. And this is a way for you to put in the graveyard things, specific things that you want. Like, oh, I've got this Omniscience in my hand. I keep saying Omniscience. It could be Mind's Dilation, or it could be whatever big enchantment.
Yeah, Omniscience is probably the best one.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk in a second, but yes. But that's a stand-in for whatever big and silly enchantment that you want to cheat out with Go-Shintai from the graveyard. So yeah, I think, again, and those are enchantments. They get rid of it. Jeskai's Ascendancy, you can get it back with your commander, which I think is pretty cool.
I like how both Titan's Nest and Jeskai Ascendancy, like all parts of the text are relevant, especially in this deck. Like, and with Titan's Nest, you want that mana. With Jeskai Ascendancy, well, you can pump up your tokens because you're for sure making tokens because your commander literally makes tokens.
Yeah, I could see a point where you're like, I've got 6 creatures. All I got to do is play 3 spells, give them all +3/+3, and then that'll lead me to victory.
Yeah,
right?
as long as you have like a halfway decent board, you're good.
Okay. I think people see that first ability, though, and they're thinking about, like we said, big splashy enchantments. So let's talk about some of those that might be fun to put in the deck. Omniscience obviously lets you cast all your spells without paying their mana cost.
Which is good.
Newsflash, it's good. Another big enchantment that's also a creature. You want to say it, Murph?
Yeah, Nyx Bloom Ancient. It's 7 mana, so it's not the biggest cheating of mana cost in the world, but Nyx Bloom Ancient, once you get it out on the field, just kind of warps the entire game around it. So making sure that you can have that on the board, and not only that, but keep it on the board, because if somebody gets rid of your Nyx Bloom Ancient, well, you still have Go-Shintai's ability to get it back.
It is also, any discount on Nyx Bloom Ancient is a big deal because the difference between 7 and 5 is actually 6 mana.
Yeah.
Because if you spend 5 on it and get it out, those 2 extra mana now tap for 6 mana.
And Nyx Bloom Ancient doesn't really care how much mana you have, because even if you have like 4 lands or something, you get a Nyx Bloom out, you suddenly have stupid amounts of mana.
Yeah. Something I'm noticing about Go-Shintai, I don't think I clocked it before, is the fact that it does not say activate only as a sorcery. So
yeah, you can do it in instant speed.
That makes it a lot tougher to deal with, because it gives sort of flash to anything that you have in your graveyard too. Another big splashy enchantment you might think about is Overwhelming Splendor. This one and the next one are a little on the mean side. This is, it enchants a player, and it says, creatures enchanted player controls lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 1/1. Enchanted player can't activate abilities that aren't mana abilities or loyalty abilities.
That's so brutal.
So it just makes all their creatures really bad and makes a lot of their stuff just not work good. It's an 8-mana enchantment, but hey, you can get it out for 5 Wooburg at instant speed.
Yeah. And the next one after that, which is also pretty mean, is Decree of Silence. Josh, you've played this one before.
I have.
Nobody liked you for doing it.
It's true. I did not win that game.
It's 6 blue enchantment. Whenever an opponent plays a spell, counter that spell and put a depletion counter on it. If there are 3 or more depletion counters on Decree of Silence, sacrifice it. So what makes this card so brutal is because you sacrifice it once it has all those depletion counters on it. What does Go-Shintai do? Bring it right back.
So brutal. If on the end step
brutal.
before your turn you put this out, it's going to counter the next 3 spells.
Yeah.
And then you could just like pass the turn or do whatever, just hold a little bit of mana up, 5 mana.
Yeah.
And then be like, okay, as soon as the 3rd spell gets countered and this goes to graveyard, I'm going to do it again. So is the table going to be able to cast 7 spells? Because only the 7th one's going to resolve.
Honestly, even if you don't have the mana up, if you play the Decree of Silence, pass, and then go around the table, nobody's going to want to play anything.
Yeah.
Because they know that those 3 spells are going to get countered, and then you'll just bring it back. Like, I think it's the threat of the Decree of Silence that will keep people at bay.
In my experience, what happens when you play Decree of Silence, though, is the table really does look at each other and be like, we're just going to cast stuff until it's gone, right?
Yeah.
Because they know if they don't, they're not going to play. So they do tend to sort of band together in those moments. It's very heartwarming.
So if you want to bring your play group together, run a Decree of Silence. Josh Lee Kwai, 2022.
It'll bring your play group together against you. But, it does have cycling as well, which I think is interesting, so that it can get itself at the graveyard for 6 mana if you have to. That's not the greatest use of it. I mean, when you do cycle it, you counter a spell, so it's not like it's useless.
Yeah, I think it's one of the better cards in the deck if you're willing to have people hate you.
Be mad at you. They don't have to.
Be mad at the way you play Magic.
Okay, I wanted to do a rules note here on Go-Shintai because it is a little bit confusing. I've seen people online. Shrine is not a creature type.
Yeah.
So it's an enchantment type. Aaron Forsyth, I saw him talking about on Twitter. He compared it a little bit to food tokens for artifacts. So you can't make all of your creatures into shrines with like Maskwood Nexus or Mirror Entity or something.
Yeah, that would be cool if that were the case.
But you cannot do that. All right, let me ask you a question here, Murph.
Yeah.
This is kind of a design question. Do you think Go-Shintai automatically becomes the default shrine commander? I only say this because Captain Sisei is doing a pretty good job right now of being the default shrine commander because, can tutor for the best shrine at all times, basically.
Yeah, I think Go-Shintai does, just because it does get those extra shrines out there. It itself is a shrine, and it brings another shrine with it. And so you're automatically getting a lot more effects. You're getting basically triple the effect whenever you play a shrine. Whereas with Sisei, you can tutor for whatever shrine you want, but you only get that one shrine, that one effect, until you start tutoring for more.
Yeah. And then I guess it's weighing that recursion versus the tutoring that's throwing me. I think Sisei's still going to probably be pretty good for shrines because tutoring, just finding the right thing is so powerful in the moment.
I mean, with Sisei, you still have to work up the chain. You can't automatically go get whatever you want.
Yeah, but I mean, you're in a shrine deck, so you're going to
So you're going to get a smaller shrine, then a bigger shrine, then a bigger shrine.
All you really need is 2 shrines, and then you can find almost any shrine in the deck, right? They don't have...
Just go all the way up to whatever your biggest and best stuff is. You can always pull that. So it's either, do you want your shrines to just do more whenever you have them with Go-Shintai, or do you want to
Have
go
the
get
right shrines at the right
specific
time.
ones?
Yeah.
Yes.
At least there's an argument there. Maybe
Yeah.
Go-Shintai isn't all the shrine decks. Maybe Sisai still sticks around, which I don't know if that's good or bad. Tutoring's not my favorite.
Yeah.
Another question is, I wanted to compare Go-Shintai to the other possible 5-color enchantment commanders.
Yeah.
So I think you can play Go-Shintai just as, it's not shrines. Maybe there's a couple shrines in there,
Yeah.
but it's just, what we would call an enchantress deck. And right now, Sisei, Kenrith, Asika, those are kind of the 3 that you see running the 5-color enchantment decks. Do you think Go-Shintai becomes the best 5-color enchantment commander?
I think it automatically does. It blows like all of the other ones out of the water just because it actually has enchantment synergies.
Yeah.
Whereas the other ones don't really. Sisei, you could argue that it could if you had the right legendary enchantments, but
She gets a lot worse there, though, because a lot of enchantments that are good are not legendary.
Exactly.
So she can't find them, and they don't interact with her in any way. And Kenrith doesn't say the word enchantment anywhere on him.
yeah, they're all still good cards, but I think Go-Shintai, just by nature of being a pretty good card and having synergy with it, like it's an enchantment creature. Having enchantment in your command zone is very powerful, and it brings out another enchantment
So, and a
automatically.
lot of enchantment cards just care about how many enchantments you have. It's
Yeah.
just like bringing 2 enchantments just kind of work like Sweetest and Champion or whatever.
Yeah, it gives you like a good amount of blocking power because you have a 3/4 and a 1/1, so you can stem the tide of people attacking you if need be. And you do have that very, very relevant recursion ability. If somebody goes to blow up your key piece, you can just get it right back.
Okay, I know we're spending a lot of time on this first commander. I have one more question,
That's
though.
very, very good.
It's a design critique question because, not even that long ago, we did an episode, Jimmy and I, where it was Dear Commander Design Team.
Yeah.
And I
like that
sort
episode a lot.
of, yeah. And I sort of, well, I mean, thank you, not yeah. There was no deal because I said yeah there. I just happened to say yeah after he said his thing because that's what people do. So one of the things we mentioned on that episode was that we did not like these 5-color commanders that don't cost 5 colors in their casting costs.
Yes.
And here we are with another one of these. What do you think about that design?
I don't like it. Just straight up, I don't like it. Because if you're going to be having all 5 colors, if you're going to be saying, hey, you can run any color you want, you
Any
can
card
run any
in
card
Magic,
in
yeah.
Magic that you want, to cast your commander, there should be some sort of cost to that. And the cost usually is you have to fix your mana. But with Go-Shintai, you don't. You just play Enchantress, and if you don't have all your colors, that's fine. You don't get access to the recursion ability, but everything else about your deck still functions.
Yeah, and I think also it's particularly bad that Go-Shintai is in green.
Yeah.
Because green is the ramp and really the fixing color.
Yeah.
If it was in, let's say it costs like 3 blue or something, maybe not blue, 3 white or something, then you would have to at least jump through some hoops.
Yeah.
Because there should be a downside to playing more colors, and usually that downside is that it's a little bit harder to hit your mana on time to cast the thing on curve.
I think that's probably why they've made these 5-color Wooburg in the text box commanders white, because of that very reason.
I don't think so. I don't think they even thought about it.
You don't
I
think
don't
so?
think it's occurred to them that is like kind of a design flaw and is sort of circumnavigating one of the inherent downsides of the giant upside of I can play the best cards in every single color.
It's part of Magic's like inherent system, the mana system, like mana fixing, mana screw, all that stuff. It just like breaks it in half.
Yeah.
It just gets rid of it completely.
So once again, I would like to say, I hope they will stop doing, and there's another one we're going to talk about later, but maybe after this, maybe 2 years from now, they can stop doing these 5-color commanders that don't cost at least more than 3 colors to cast. All right, that is Go-Shintai. That is one. If we take that long on every single one, we'll buckle up, everybody. You're going to be here for about 4 days. We won't. We won't. They're not all as good or have as many synergies as Go-Shintai.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to and speaking of which, this one will be a little quicker. The next one is GREASEFANG, OKIBA Boss. It is 1 white and a black for a 4/3 legendary rat pilot. At the beginning of combat on your turn, return target vehicle card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of your next end step.
That's a lot of weird words all put together.
Yeah, so we've got an Orzhov Vehicles Commander. It recurs vehicles from your graveyard, so you're going to need vehicles in your graveyard.
Yep.
And I think you want low CMC stuff so you can get something good into your graveyard before you cast GREASEFANG, right? So I think your self-mill needs to be small. Stitcher's Supplier, we already talked about. Perpetual Timepiece.
Josh Lee quite special.
Mesmeric Orb.
Yeah. Entomb like
still
before,
good.
yeah.
I mean, I would love to entomb get a specific
best vehicle
there.
you have in your deck.
I think Entombing, like, honestly, if I got Entomb early, I would get a Dredge card probably, Stinkweed Imp, Golgari Thug, or Dakmor Salvage, maybe.
I'd be greedy. I'd go get a Parhelion too.
Yeah, that's pretty good, but you're going to get one. See, we're going to talk about that in a second, so I won't get into it. I think Dakmor or Golgari Thug will probably give you more self-mill over time to make it worth it.
You absolutely do want to like get that engine going so that you can get that self-mill. You have choices, you have selection, because the interesting thing about this card is that when it's done with that vehicle, when you're done reanimating it, it goes back to your hand. So you can use it again, but you can't use the ability on the commander again until you somehow get it back into your graveyard.
Okay, we're going to get to that bounce thing because it's a little bit annoying, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I think, like you said about Parhelion, I think the thing you see when you see GREASEFANG is, what cool vehicles could I get?
Yeah,
could
what can I cheat
into
out?
Play? And remember, the vehicles still have to be crewed to attack.
Yeah, that's the weird part
GREASEFANG does not bring... GREASEFANG should turn them into a creature and give them haste out of your graveyard. But no, they still have to be crewed. Now, GREASEFANG is a 4/3.
Which is pretty good.
So it can crew a lot of things. Some of the cool vehicles we think you can get out are stuff like Parhelion 2, which is normally 8 mana for a 5/5 flyer, first strike vigilance. But whenever it attacks, you create 2 4/4 flying angels, tapped and attacking. And it has crew 4, so GREASEFANG could crew it.
Yeah, so that's probably like your best top end in the deck.
Yeah, it's also kind of your best turn 4, play GREASEFANG. You're right, you're not wrong, right?
Yeah.
Turn 4, play GREASEFANG, Parhelion comes out, crew it, attack, make 2 4/4 angels, bounces back to your hand.
That's the problem.
Yeah, well, hold on, we're going to talk about the problem in a minute. People want to hear about cool stuff first.
All right, more cool stuff.
So more cool vehicles, that's not the only one. There are vehicles like Sky Sovereign, which is very powerful. It's a 6/5 flyer with crew 3, and when it attacks or ETBs, it deals 3 damage to, I believe it's any target now. No, target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Can't hit players directly.
Yeah.
Very powerful because you're going to do basically 6 damage the turn it comes out, right?
Yeah, and that's another important part about the text of this card, in that it doesn't bring the vehicle to play like tapped and attacking or anything.
Right.
It brings it into play, then you have to crew it, and then you attack with it. So you can get enter the battlefield effects as well as attacking triggers.
Yeah, and it does give haste, so you're allowed to do that.
Yep.
Bomat Bazaar Barge is just one that comes in and draws you a card.
It's good value.
Also a 5/5.
Yeah.
Fleet Wheel Cruiser. It turns itself into a creature, so it does get around. It's a 5/3, but it's got trample haste and turns itself into a creature the turn it comes into play. So it does get around that sort of need to crew it thing.
Yeah.
Conqueror's Galleon's an interesting one. This one flips over and becomes a land after it attacks.
Yeah.
So because it exiles itself and then transforms, it won't remember that it needs to bounce to your hand. So you kind of get to keep the value from that. It becomes Conqueror's Foothold.
It's ramp.
Yeah, that's ramp. And it's just like a way to be like, GREASEFANG actually like...
does something permanent on the board.
Exactly. Peace Walker Colossus is another card. Maybe you don't cheat it out with GREASEFANG, but it could be a way to sort of crew the vehicles without needing a creature, because it is a 6/6 vehicle with crew 4, but it has an activated ability of 1 in a white. Another target vehicle you control becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. So you can kind of crew with mana instead of tapping a creature.
And not only that, but it does have crew 4. So even if this sits on the battlefield and you do have GREASEFANG out, you can still crew this 6/6, start attacking with it as well as your other vehicles.
Okay, now let's talk about that thing that you keep wanting to talk about, which is that GREASEFANG bounces the thing back to your hand on the end step.
Yeah, that makes it so awkward, because now I have to get that thing either back out onto the battlefield and then to the graveyard and then back, which seems bad, or you discard it directly into the graveyard, which also doesn't seem amazing.
Or it's stuck in your hand.
Or it's just stuck in your hand.
You need an effect to put it into the graveyard. You might not have that. I don't understand why they felt the need to bounce it to your hand to begin with. Vehicles already have this large downside of they have to be crewed.
Yeah.
And so why did it, would this be broken at all if it just said at the beginning of combat on your turn, return target vehicle card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste and becomes a creature until end of turn.
Probably not.
That doesn't feel broken. It still feels like, because what you're going to find as you try and build a vehicle deck is there aren't very many good vehicles.
Yeah.
And so it's just really hard to get a critical mass where you feel like, oh, if I don't draw one of these 5 or 6 cards, my deck's not that great. And that's what it feels like right now. Okay, sorry. There's other ways around the bounce effect, though. You could flicker the vehicle.
Yeah.
So ostensibly you're going to crew it, Parhelion or whatever, right? The turn it comes out, attack with it. You have to bounce it at the end of a turn, but if you were to cast Ephemerate on it...
Or just any sort of flicker effect, it'll exile, it'll come back, and it'll just forget that it has to get bounced back to your hand, because it's a new object.
It's a new object, so it doesn't remember it has this return to your hand thing. Teleportation Circle, Conjurer's Closet, those both trigger on end step, but you just stack the triggers so it blinks it away before the bounce happens.
Yeah.
You can also have sacrifice outlets so that you can at least get value off of the thing before it bounces back to your hand. And actually, it's better for you, I think, in a lot of ways. For it to go back to the graveyard so that you can have Greasefang bring it out again next turn.
Yeah, because if you have like the enter the battlefield effects, or you want to just keep attacking with it or whatever, it's safe in the graveyard for the most part. But it's very safe in the graveyard. You can get those ETB triggers again, and you just do exactly what you did this turn, again, next turn.
Yeah, whereas if Parhelion's in your hand, you need 8 mana.
Which is a lot.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't have haste.
Yeah. So Trading Post, sack artifact, draw a card.
I like Trading Post a lot in this as well, because in a pinch, if you have something in your hand, you can also discard it, because it has that discard as an option for Trading Post.
I like it because you can also make goats.
Also goats. Goats are great.
Trading Post is just a good card, but it's 4 mana is a little high these days. I like Village Rites, which is an instant for 1 black mana, and as an additional cost to cast it, you sack a creature, and it lets you draw 2 cards.
Very easy to proc.
Yeah, this is just a way to sort of get your value. You bring a thing out of the graveyard, attack with it, sack it, draw your 2 cards, the next turn bring it out of the graveyard again. KCI, Kark Clan Ironworks is just Ashnod's Altar for...
Yeah.
You could just run Ashnod's too, because... you're supposed
running artifacts.
You're supposed to crew
artifacts.
these vehicles, right?
Yeah.
For the most part, you're hoping that you don't bring it back from the graveyard and then not crew it. So it will be a creature at the time you need it to be for Ashnod's and for Phyrexian Altar if you want to run those.
But I do like Kark Clan Ironworks, because if you have a bunch of vehicles just sitting around, you have nothing to crew them with, you can at least start powering some things out.
Yeah, you can turn them into mana and start making some moves. And then, of course, there's always Sundial of the Infinite to get around effects that say at the beginning of your next end step.
I love Sundial of the Infinite. Every single time there's an effect like this, it's like, oh, well, does Sundial work with this? Does Sundial work with this?
So what you do is you wait until the end step, and then the vehicle trigger goes on the stack of, hey, return this thing to your hand.
Yep.
And you go, in response, I tap Sundial of the Infinite, and I end the turn.
Trigger's gone forever.
Yep.
But as long as it's on the stack.
But the thing said, I tried, so I don't have to try again to bounce to the hand.
It has fulfilled that condition.
You've made a note here that it's disappointing that this deck is Orzhov and missing red.
Yeah, I get why they did that, but I think with red, it would have added a lot of, you have those looting effects again, like Faithless Looting, get stuff into your graveyard very easily. But more importantly than that, a lot of vehicle synergies are in red.
Yeah,
right?
in Kaladesh, red was one of the vehicle colors. You have Dapala and things like that. You said you get why they did it. Why'd they do it?
Why'd they do it? Because they have another red, white, black commander that we'll be talking about shortly. And so they probably didn't want to double up on those types of commanders, but still disappointing.
I also think you miss out on the extra combat steps, which would work really well with Greasefang. Just let you use the vehicles a couple of times. Also, would you get more Greasefang triggers, that kind of thing, right? Is it worded in such a way that you would at the beginning of combat? Yeah.
On your turn, yeah. So you just get another combat, you get another vehicle back, and your vehicles are already crewed, and so they're ready to go again.
It's still, I think you can probably make, you know what? I like to call out these decks that are listen, if you built Greasefang around some vehicles to the best of your ability, it will probably never be above a 7.
It'll be a fine deck.
Yeah, it'll probably be, honestly, it'll probably be a 6.5 max. I mean, maybe a 7 if you totally ignore the vehicle thing and just built the,
Emptied out.
If you just use the best Orzhov deck that doesn't care about what its commander is, if you cheat it a little. But if you build around Greasefang at all, I think the deck probably can't be above a 6.5. So, that's a good way if you're looking for a deck all my decks are always too powerful. People tell us that all the time. So maybe Greasefang, look at that. Okay, we've got a bunch more multicolored commanders from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty to discuss, but we're going to take a quick break first and hear a message from our sponsors.
Don't go away.
Hi, Vorinclex, voice of hunger here, and I speak for all the hungry people and praters out there when I say we want to eat and we want to eat now. That's why we need Factor, the meal service where you never have to wait to sate your world-consuming cravings. It's a new year, you're working on the grind, tapping down lands, you don't have time to cook or shop. But Factor's pre-completed meals meals are delivered ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Factor makes it easy for me to eat clean 24/7 with fresh, never frozen, prepared meals that are so delicious you wouldn't believe they're actually good for you. And whether you want vegan options, extra protein, or literally all the food, like me, Factor's got you covered. With over 27 options each week, even a ravenous devourer of planes won't get bored. That said, I could eat their chive and garlic chicken forever! So remember, folks, listen to the voice of your hunger when it says, try Factor today.
Head to go.factor75.com/plans and use code COMMAND120 to get $120 off over your first 5 weeks of meals. That's code COMMAND120 at go.factor75.com/plans for $120 off.
Hey there, this is my partner, Lovestruck Beast. And I'm his heart's desire, also known as his Valentine. We may not look like a perfect match, but we are. And you know what else matches? Our MeUndies. So this Valentine's Day, why not make your life a fairy tale with matching underwear for you and your partner? Express your one-of-a-kind relationship when you match your bottom half to your better beastlier half in fun limited edition prints. Or if you're single, mingle in matching pairs with your friends, family, or your 7 dwarven pals. You can even get dog hoodies or buddy bands to match your canine companion. So be sure to check out all of MeUndies' super cute and super soft undies, socks, bralettes, loungewear, and more available in sizes extra small to 4XL. And remember, you've got to stay comfy because love is an adventure.
MeUndies has a great offer for fans of the Command Zone. For a limited time only, get 20% off your first order of matching pairs for Valentine's Day. And as a first-time purchaser, you can also get 15% off and free shipping right to your door. To get 20% off matching pairs, 15% off your first order, free shipping, and a 100% satisfaction guarantee, go to MeUndies.com/command. That's MeUndies.com/command.
Avast me hearties, the name's Zara, renegade recruiter, and I'm looking to grow me pirate crew. For years I searched me opponent's measly hands and found only scurvy dogs. But then I started using Indeed, the hiring partner that lets you attract, interview, and hire all in one place. It'd be the only job site where you're guaranteed to find candidates that meet your must-have requirements, or you don't pay a doubloon. Indeed is your first mate at every step of the hiring process, helping to find great talent while saving time with tools like virtual interviews. Plus, there's my favorite part of Indeed, Instant Match. It provides me with a short list of quality candidates the moment I sponsor a post. Then I can invite them to apply immediately, knowing they'll be ready to enter the battlefield attacking! With Indeed, I have a treasure map to the grandest booty of all, qualified enthusiastic employees. Yar!
Start hiring right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/CommandZone. Offer is valid through March 31st, so go to Indeed.com/CommandZone to claim your $75 credit before March 31st. Again, Indeed.com/CommandZone. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, we are back. We are talking about the multicolored commanders from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. What's up next?
All right, we have HIDETSUGU Devouring Chaos. 3 and a black for a legendary creature, Ogre Demon. You can pay a black, sacrifice a creature to scry 2, or you can pay 2 and a red, tap, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn, and when you exile a non-land card this way, HIDETSUGU Devouring Chaos deals damage equal to the exile card's mana value to any target. So this is actually a Rakdos commander.
Yeah, Rakdos Aristocrats, probably. The sacrifice on the scry kind of makes me think that's what it is, but it has some other stuff going on where it wants you to kind of exile or impulsive draw big spells off the top so you can dome people, or I guess you can hit creatures and stuff, planeswalkers for whatever the CMC or mana value is. So Rakdos Aristocrats, it's interesting because there are those decks.
Yeah, that archetype is already like well established. There's plenty of commanders for it.
But the thing is, most of those decks, they don't have a commander that actually has the sacrificing on it for the most part. So it might be interesting to sort of, I was thinking like Pitiless Plunderer.
Oh, yeah.
Zorn, which if you would create a treasure, instead create that many treasure plus 1.
Mm-hmm.
And Pitiless Plunderer, whenever a creature you control dies, you make a treasure. Maybe that with like Mayhem Devil. Because now you're creating the treasure that can pay for the sacrifice on HIDETSUGU. Maybe you can get in some kind of loop and then Mayhem Devil can do some stuff. I think there might be like a deck that cares about doing stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool, yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, you can add in the Judith, Jury. Maybe there's some Dargo combo-y stuff going on. These are all sort of the commanders right now that are doing the Rakdos Aristocrats stuff. they just kind of incidentally pay you off for sacrificing things, whereas Hidetsugu does give you this sacrifice outlet.
Yeah, that's the interesting part, right? Would you rather have your payoff on your commander, or would you rather have the enabler on your commander?
Yeah, I just sort of think it depends. And in this case, because you're in black-red, there are so many enablers for the strategy that maybe it's fine not to have it on your commander.
Yeah.
But it does kind of flip, I think, the cards you would play a little bit if you're like, oh, I don't need as many sack outlets because I know I always have access to one.
Yeah, you just run the really good ones, the 2 mana free sacrifice outlets, but in a pinch, you always have something.
And you still get all those support cards like Grave Pact, Blood Artist, blah, blah, blah.
Aristocrats.
Aristocrats.
It's an
knows.
archetype.
There is the second ability now, so let's
Yeah, I think that's the more
speeds here.
interesting one.
Yeah, so you want some library manipulation. You want to be able to sort of know what's on top of your deck. Obviously, the Sacrifice and the Scry kind of can do this a little bit, but you might not always have creatures that you want to sacrifice.
Yep.
So it's nice, I think, to have Sensei's Divining Top, Scroll Rack. Viscera Seer can kind of do it because it doesn't cost mana, which might be a worry for you.
Yeah.
Well, will be a worry for you because that second ability is expensive. Like 3 mana, tap your commander to do the thing. You don't want to whiff. That'll be pretty big. You want it to be effective.
Yeah, you don't want to waste the mana. Plus, Viscera Seer probably just slots in this deck anyway because you're going to be sacrificing things.
So let's talk about big impulsive stuff. You mentioned that it's kind of the inverse of Prosper, whereas Prosper wants you to exile sort of low mana value stuff. Hidetsugu wants you to exile high mana value stuff.
Yeah,
so
and I like that they're pushing in a different direction in that regard. The problem is I think Prosper is just better because of that.
I mean, it turns out if you're playing lower CMC stuff, your deck will almost always just be more powerful.
That's generally how it goes. Prosper, you want to be exiling lands, like low CMC mana rocks and stuff like that. That gets your engine going, and then you can start playing the big things, right?
Yeah, you want the treasure to be created, and you want that to be created for as little mana as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah, whereas Hidetsugu is like, hey, if you exile something huge off the top, then you can do a bunch of damage, and that can be removal, whatever. So you can do, the big stuff is like Karavek the Merciless, Archon of Cruelty. I forgot this card existed. You want to read it?
Yeah. So Archon of Cruelty is a 6/black flying creature. It's a 6/6. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, target opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker, discards a card, loses 3 life. You draw a card and gain 3 life. So you just kind of wreck your opponent.
You just do a lot.
And you get a card.
What do you do? Everything? Okay.
Yeah. You just do everything.
It's 8 mana, so it would deal 8.
Yeah.
There's also Baneful Omen. This was another one of your picks. This is a hipster pick.
Yeah, so it's a 4 black, 7 mana enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, you may reveal the top card of your library. If you do, each opponent loses life equal to that card's converted mana cost.
And since you're already sort of caring what's on top of your library and being able to sort of like pick what that is.
Exactly. If you hit it off the top of Hidetsugu, you're not upset because it's 7 damage. If it's in your hand and you just play it normally, then you're still doing what the deck wants to do. And it hits each opponent, whereas Hidetsugu only does it to any target.
Yeah, only. I think it's good to hit creatures, but yeah.
Well,
here's the thing. You need so much mana to pull this off if you want to play the card. So Hidetsugu, it says you exile the non-land card, and you may play that card this turn. It's not even until your next turn.
Like Prosper, yeah.
So you have to have, if you reveal an 8 CMC spell off the top, with Hidetsugu, you have to have had 11 mana that turn in order to play that card. Otherwise, it's only there for being a high CMC, high mana value thing that deals a lot of damage. And then you don't get the card advantage aspect of it.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a big downside. I think you can, it's Rakdos, so you can put some things in that are going to be able to give you a bunch of mana, like Mana Geyser, Jessica's Will. You can probably do Cabal Coffers plus Urborg.
Yeah.
It's not like Rakdos decks can't create like big bursts of mana. Treasonous Ogre can kind of do this, but it's not easy to get there. And generally,
it'll take some time, no matter what.
I mean, how often is just using your 11 mana in that way going to be better, better than Torment of Hell firing with that amount of mana or something? You know what I mean?
You're playing a big spell, it'll be impactful, and you're doing a large amount of damage to something.
It's just not hard to find a way in these colors or in any colors really to just be like, hey, yeah, if I have 12 to 15 mana, I could do something crazy. And if Hidetsugu's crazy thing is like reveal an 8-drop off the top and cast it, deal 8 damage to something, I don't know. It just doesn't seem particularly strong.
Yeah, I think that's another thing where we were talking about do you want the enabler or the payoff in your command zone? And I think for the second ability, that's the payoff, not the enabler. Whereas with Prosper, it's the enabler. Because it's creating those treasures, it's creating that mana that you want so that you can do some big thing. But what Hidetsugu wants is you want that big thing to be whatever you exile the top.
Yeah. It's almost like you want a medium thing, so you might actually be able to cast it and get the whatever, but then you're not doing much damage.
Yeah.
This is you can do a couple other things. There's damage boosters in black and red as well. So Fire Emancipation will triple the damage from Hitotsugu.
That's where it gets fun.
So then that's like reveal the Archon of Cruelty, Dome Something for 24.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, that's a lot. Wound Reflection is another one, which will at the end step, people will take the amount, or your opponents will take the amount of damage they already took this turn. Yep. So again, that turns 8 CMC or 8 mana value thing into 16 damage. So you can do some interesting stuff, but I'm not super impressed with Hitotsugu. I think it's going to be a little clunky.
Yeah, the fact that it like costs 3 mana to do and then tap, as well as you have to pay 4 mana and play it, wait a whole turn, and then do it. Like, it's just a lot for not a huge payoff.
Yeah. How much better do you think it would be if the tap just wasn't there? But then it's create infinite mana win.
Yeah. So
what if it's 2 mana and tap?
2 mana and tap, I think, would be a good bit better.
All right. Well, it's not that. It's 3.
Yeah, it's not that.
So it doesn't matter how much we talk about it. Okay.
Should be fun, but
I think it's I don't know. I don't know. That's going to be that much more interesting than all the Rakdos commanders that already exist. Honestly.
Yeah.
This next one's a little bit interesting.
Yeah.
It is Hinata, Dawn Crowned, 1 blue, red, white. So 4 mana for a 4/4 flying trample Kirin Spirit.
Sure.
Spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each target.
That's interesting.
Spells your opponents cast cost 1 more to cast for each target.
That's very interesting. Like, this, of all of the commanders, I feel like this was the hardest one for me to evaluate, to look at that and think, okay, well, how good is this actually? Because
I think it's quite good, and I think you came to the same conclusion because the spells that target are often removal spells, and those are things that, as we have discussed on this show, we're sort of adding more and more to as the years go by. Like, it used to be like, we'd say like 4 to 5 single target removal spells, and now we're up to like a dozen or so.
Yeah.
Really sort of ratcheting down the number of board wipes just because the format's a little bit faster. And if your opponents are also doing that, that means that there's a significant amount of cards in their deck that you're making more expensive, and a significant cards in your deck that you're making less expensive. And then, of course, you can mess with this equation by cards that target multiple things.
Like Comet Storm, X red, but multi-kicker 1. You can choose any target, then choose another target for each time this spell was kicked. Comet Storm deals X damage to each of them.
So that means it pays for the multi-kicker. You may as well just target everything.
Yeah.
Because it's free.
Yeah, you automatically get 1 mana discount for targeting the first thing, and then every multi-kicker after that, you can just target any number of things. You obviously have to pay mana into X in order to make it big enough for it to have an impact. So,
but that's a big deal because often you're like, oh boy, I got 11 mana. I want to target these 4 things.
Yeah.
That means that my 11 mana is really only 7 mana, which means minus the 2 red.
Yeah.
Now it's only dealing 5 damage. And it's like, it chips away at it fast. Whereas if you have 11 mana and Hinata out, then you can target everything and do 9 to all of it.
Yeah, not only that, but you can do 9 to all of not your creatures.
Right.
You can do 9 to all of your opponents, not you. So just having that selectiveness in it, I think, is also quite good.
And it's an instant. There's a lot of red burn spells that are going to fit in this category. Aurelia's Fury is another one that's very similar, but there's a whole bunch, so we're not going to name them all. Red burn spells often allow you to target multiple things, and reducing the cost on them makes them a heck of a lot better.
Yeah.
Here's a really interesting one that Truck found.
I like this one.
It's Soulfire Eruption.
Have you ever played this card, Josh?
No, and I will
never
admit
seen anybody play
that
this card.
it came out in like Commander Legends or something. It was somewhere around that time, I think. And I forgot about it as soon as we talked about it the one time on the set review.
I've never seen it before.
Soulfire Eruption, 6 red, 9 mana for a sorcery. Choose any number of target creatures, planeswalkers, and or players.
Ooh.
For each of them, exile the top card of your library. Then, Soulfire Eruption deals damage equal to that card's converted mana cost to that permanent or player. You may play the exiled cards until the end of your next turn.
That is nutty. So with your commander outs, and assuming you have, what is it? It's 6 red?
Yep.
Yeah, assuming you have your commander outs and you have at least 6 targets, probably just you need 3 creatures on the board because you automatically have 3 opponents.
Yep.
Then you can just play this for 3 mana. And that's nuts.
You could technically target Hinata with one of them if you want to.
If you wanted to.
So the most it could cast really is 5, or cost is 5 mana, right?
Yeah.
You can target yourself.
That's true.
So if you wanted to, you could always get it to 4.
That's crazy.
Mana.
Assuming there's nothing else on board.
And of course, other people have their commanders and things like that. So this impulsively draws you at least 4, 5, 6 cards.
Yep.
And it costs 3 mana, it kills some stuff, and it deals a bunch of damage. Yeah, this card seems really, really good.
Yeah, and you can play it until the end of your next turn.
Yeah.
Which is very important as well.
Yeah, you can technically play it until the end of your next turn, but you've only probably spent 3 mana on this thing, so you actually have some mana available on the turn you play this.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think it's quite good.
It's quite good with this commander.
This next one's really good too.
Yeah, so it's Magma Opus. Get it? Get it? It's 6 blue-red instant. It deals 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets. Tap 2 target permanents, create a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token, draw 2 cards. So that's a lot of different targets that you can have with it. Because you have
6, right?
Yeah, you got the 4 damage that you can divide as you want. So you can do 1, 1, 1, 1, and then you can tap 2 target permanents. So that gets you up to your 6.
So as long as there are at least, again, 3 creatures, right? Because you can do 1 damage to 3 players. Oh, you could do yourself.
You could do yourself, and then you could tap 2 target permanents. It doesn't have to be a creature that you tap down. So you're always going to have that 6 targets. So you can play this for 2 mana as long as you have your commander out, and that's going to make you a 4/4 and draw 2 cards, and maybe that damage will actually do something.
2 mana instant, make a 4/4, draw 2 cards.
That is pretty good.
That's pretty great. And then, of course, there are a bunch of like blue bounce spells that target many things.
Yeah.
Aether Gale is 3 blue, returns 6 target non-land permanents to their owner's hand. So blue, returns 6 things to their owner's hand. That's pretty good. Baral's Expertise. This one's really good.
I love this card.
So it's 3 blue for a sorcery. Return up to 3 target artifacts and or creatures to their owner's hand. So it'll be just blue if you do that.
2 mana.
And then you may cast a card with converted mana cost 4 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. So pay 2 mana, cast a 4 mana thing, bounce 3 things.
That's such a huge tempo swing, right? As long as you have your commander out, you play this, you're bouncing 3 things, and then playing something from your hand for free.
Yeah, a 4 mana thing or smaller.
That's crazy.
That's one of the best cards in the deck, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
That's because it's just like, even if you're just like year 3 mana, my opponents, each one of your mana rocks, and then I cast, whatever, some impactful thing, my Thran Dynamo or whatever. I don't know why that came to mind because it's 4 CMC, but.
Yeah, we're constantly talking about the floor here, and given that the floor of all these things is just so good, it really speaks to like how powerful this card can be.
There's other cool stuff. So the Strive mechanic.
Yeah.
So Strive says this spell costs a certain amount extra for each
additional target.
Yeah, target beyond the first. So it will reduce the Strive cost. So Call the Coppercoats is 2 and a white. Choose any number of target opponents. Create X 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens where X is the number of creatures those opponents control. But this spell costs 1 and a white more to cast for each target beyond the first. So it's 3 mana, target Murph.
Yep.
But that would be only 2 mana because Hinata would reduce that by 1.
Exactly.
And then for a white mana, because again, reduced by 1, I can choose another opponent and a white mana another opponent. So 4 mana, I could choose all my opponents and create a 1/1 for all the creatures they have.
At instant speed.
Yep. Launch the Fleet is really good. So after I've done Call of the Coppercoats, then I think on my turn, I'd probably launch the Fleet.
Yep.
It's 1 mana for a sorcery. Until end of turn, any number of target creatures gain. Whenever this creature attacks, put a 1/1 white soldier creature token onto the battlefield tapped and attacking, and it has a Strive cost of 1.
1 colorless mana. That's important.
Yeah. So I pay the white, I target one of the soldiers, and then all other targets for me are free because they're 1 white mana, Hinata, 1 colorless mana, Hinata reduces it by 1. So I go, I have, I Call the Coppercoat, made 6 creatures, and now I target all 6 of them with Launch the Fleet.
Yeah. So as long as you have a somewhat decent board, you can just double the size of your board.
Pretty good.
For a white mana.
I like the next one a lot.
Oh, the next one is Twin Flame, 1 and a red sorcery. Choose any number of target creatures you control. For each of them, put a token that's a copy of that creature onto the battlefield. They gain haste, exile them at the beginning of the next end step, and you can strive for 2 and a red.
So again, you just make sort of temporary copies of your own stuff.
Yep.
We're going to keep going because there's a few more because this is just fun. There's Hate Mirage, 3 and a red for a sorcery. Choose up to 2 target creatures you control. For each of those creatures, create a token that's a copy. They gain haste. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step. So 2 mana.
2 mana to do that.
Make a copy of 2 things that you control with haste for until end of turn.
Yep. Hour of Eternity, XX blue. 3 blues. Exile. That's too many blues. It's a sorcery. Exile X target creature cards from your graveyard. For each card exiled this way, create a token that's a copy of that card. It's a 4/4 black zombie. So with something like this, it's oftentimes very easy to get tracked into, my spells have to target a permanent. Well, that's not actually true, because the way that the commander is worded just cares about spells targeting anything. So like counter spells will work with this.
Things in graveyard.
Things in graveyard if you're targeting things in graveyard.
I like the XX because you think about it as it just turns the spell into blue, blue, blue X.
Yeah.
Right? So you would normally have to, if I want to target one thing, I would have to play one twice.
Yep.
But because it's reduced by one, if it's two things, I'd have to pay two twice.
Yep.
But the two things are each reduced by one. So, it's 4 mana, get a 4/4 version of something in your graveyard out. 5 mana, get 2 of those things. 6 mana, get 3 of those things. That's crazy. 6 mana, get 3 4/4 versions of 3 different things in your graveyard is pretty nuts.
I think at 5 for 2, you're happy.
Yeah.
Like you're happy with that, and then anything beyond that is just crazy.
Yeah. And then, of course, Sublime Epiphany. 4 blue, blue. Choose one or more. Counter target spell. Target. Counter target activated or triggered ability. Target.
Yep.
Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Target. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. Target player draws a card. Blue, blue. Do as many of those as you feel like. It's hard to counter a spell and an activated ability, I'll grant you, in the same sequence, but still.
If I ever make this deck, I think I'm going to call it Stay on Target. Stay on Target.
That's good. That's good. All right, and then there are targeting payoffs. So if you're already going to be targeting a bunch of stuff, there are certain cards that kind of reward you for targeting.
Yeah, so we got Cowardice and Dismiss into Dream. So Cowardice is whenever a creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, return that creature to its owner's hand. Dismiss into Dream, your opponents have whenever they become a target of something, then they have to sacrifice it.
Yeah, so think of those spells that said deal 4 damage divided any number of ways. Well, that's not that great. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Yes, it's reducing the cost of the spell, but if you have Dismiss into Dream or Cowardice or Willbreaker out, Willbreaker will allow you to steal the creatures while Willbreaker's on the battlefield. Then all of a sudden it turns all that targeting that seems minor into something that's crazy powerful.
Yeah.
You put something interesting down, which is the heroic mechanic.
Yeah.
And I think you could build a heroic deck around Hinata.
Yeah. So the Theros block was when I first started playing, and I always liked the heroic mechanic. Heroic is whenever you cast a spell that targets this thing, do thing X. So Battlefield Thaumaturge.
This card's really good, period, even if you're not heroicing it.
The heroic is whenever you cast a spell that targets it gains hexproof until end of turn. Not that interesting, but each instant and sorcery spell you cast costs 1 less to cast for each creature it targets. So that just plays into the exact same thing that you're doing already.
Think about Hour of Eternity with Battlefield Thaumaturge.
It's blue, 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 do whatever you want.
Blue, blue, blue. Get all those creatures back. Thank you very much.
Yep, I'll take them all.
Yeah, there's Triton, Fortune Hunter, Heroic, draw a card. I like a Crone Conscriptor, Heroic Threaten Effect. Heroic, take a creature from somebody until end of turn. Yeah, that seems pretty cool. And then we were talking about this card. I think you can obviously go down this road. Voltron Auras is another thing you could probably do.
Yeah, because auras automatically target whenever you cast them, and so your auras just start costing a lot less. And
just one less.
Well, it adds up.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can Voltron, and I think it would be fine. It's a way to keep it, sort of under control.
Yeah.
But we were just sort of talking about how, it's just powerful to have this effect on a counterspell.
Yeah.
Not the card counterspell, but, disallow.
Yeah.
Right?
So now your disallow is just blue, blue.
How about negate?
It's just blue.
Yeah. I think it's okay to, have single target things in your deck. You don't have to have everything be Comet Storm or target 3 or 4 things.
Yeah, you can just have, normal interaction that you would play anyway. Plenty of people will play negate. Plenty of people will play disallow. And I think you probably should, because those are good cards. But then once those really good cards are reduced by 1 colorless mana, they just become insane.
Yeah. Reality Shift.
1 blue mana.
It's just 50% as much.
Yep.
That makes it way better. You even said even Stroke of Genius will cost 1 less.
There you go.
What's good is those untap land spells.
Oh my gosh.
So Rewind, Unwind, and Snap are Rewind is the example I'll use here. It's 4 mana for a counter target spell, but then you untap up to 4 lands.
So now you're benefiting. You're gaining mana.
Yeah, these are supposed to be balanced. Hey, it costs you 4 mana, then we give you the 4 lands back. But it's no, I'm actually going to cost me 3 mana and I'll get 4 lands back.
Well, lo and behold, that mechanic is not the most balanced thing in all of Magic, but
it's true. It turns out it's easy to break. Hinata, pretty strong.
Yep.
Pretty strong. And I will say that this next one is the deck that Lady Danger is playing on the next episode of Game Nights.
Spoilers, Josh.
Yeah, the Neon Dynasty episode. It is ISSHIN, 2 heavens as 1. It is red, white, and black for a 3/4 human samurai. If a creature attacking would cause a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers in additional time.
I love this card. I think this card is a lot of fun. I think because we just had Wolfgar come out not too long ago, right?
Yeah.
Wolfgar is 3, a red and a green. It does something similar. If a creature you control attacking would cause a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time.
I would call both of these attack harmonicon.
Yeah, you're doubling up attack triggers, right?
There are subtle differences, which we'll talk about with Wolfgar to ISSHIN.
But at its base level, I think having ISSHIN be 3 mana as opposed to 5 mana is huge, as well as being in more of the attack colors, red and white versus red and green, I think helps it out quite a lot.
Yeah, red-white has a lot of the attack triggers.
Yes.
So just getting access to white opens you up to a bunch of the attack stuff you would want in Wolfgar.
Did you ever think, hey, I'm glad they put white on this card?
I'm glad they changed out green for white. No, I never thought I'd say that. All right, so I think the first thing people are asking is like, what are the cool attack triggers? And there are a bunch.
Yeah.
I like this first one a lot.
So we got Delina Wild Mage, 3 and a red for a 3/2 creature. Whenever Delina Wild Mage attacks, choose one of your creatures, and then you get to roll a d20. If you get a 1 through 14, you get a tapped and attacking copy of that creature, and you exile that at end of combat. And then also if you get a 15 through 20, then you get to roll again. So you got another chance of getting another token, and you also have the opportunity to possibly roll again.
So you can end up getting on a roll, and it's basically like having, Kark's Thumb?
Yeah.
Where you get to roll 2 dice the first time, and if both are above...
It's Kark's other thumb that rolls dice.
Right, sorry.
Wrong thumb.
Yeah, if both are above 15, then you would roll twice again, but at least if you have a better chance of having one of them be in 15 through 20.
Exactly, you're just like starting to up your percentages, and it just has a much more likelihood of this going well for you.
Krenko, 10 Street Kingpin's really, really good with this. 2 and red for a 1/2. Whenever it attacks, you put a 1/1 counter on it and then create a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to Krenko's power.
That amasses goblin tokens so fast.
Yeah, so you attack, it becomes a 2/3, you make 2 goblins, and then it triggers again and becomes a 3/4, and you make 3 goblins. So it's 1 attack, 5 goblins, and it grows by 2 power and 2 toughness.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And then another token maker, and this actually gets 2 attack triggers twice.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. Hero of Bladehold. This is 2 white for a 3/4 with Battle Cry. Whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn, and whenever it attacks, you get 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens tapped and attacking.
So you can stack this so that what'll happen is you'll make the 2 tokens, then Battle Cry goes off, and they're actually 2 ones. And then you make 2 more tokens, and Battle Cry goes off, and the first ones are 3 ones, and the second ones are 2 ones.
Yeah.
So you've got 4 tokens, 2 2-1s, and 2 3-1s.
But regardless, like, that's a lot of power tapped and attacking for 1 card.
Yeah. Because it doubles up 2 triggers on it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, like, you suddenly have an instant board, your dudes are super buff. Like, I just like that one a lot.
I think 2 drops are going to be super important in the ISSHIN deck because you play ISSHIN on turn 3. You want to be able to... So you want to play a 2-drop, play ISSHIN on turn 3, and attack with your 2-drop. I think that's just a lot more powerful than playing like a 3-drop and playing ISSHIN off curve on turn 4, wasting that mana. So you want to look for... they're not going to be quite as good as the 3 and 4-drop triggers, but still I think like Sky Knight Vanguard, which creates 1/1, so you'll make 2 1/1s when it attacks. Triumphant Adventurer ventures into the dungeon.
Oh, yeah.
So venture into the dungeon twice. It also has Death Touch, so they're not likely to want to block it. And it's when it's your turn, it has First Strike, so they really can't.
Yeah, you're probably going to be attacking with it anyway, so it's going to have Death Touch and First Strike, which is a very potent combination.
So that's something you're likely to be able to attack with every single turn, get 2 ventures into the dungeon. And then if you have to, you could always hold it back because of the Death Touch on defense.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And Cheering Fanatic is one I really, really like. It's 1 and a red for a 2/2. When it attacks, you choose a card name, and then spells with the chosen name cost 1 less to cast this turn. So
That's interesting.
Yeah, so you're a deck, just like any deck in the format that doesn't have green, you've got a lot of mana rocks in your deck. So there's turns, I think, where ISSHIN gets played on turn 3, you attack with Cheering Fanatic because you played it on 2, and you say Arcane Signet for free.
Yep.
Because it reduces it by 2.
Yep.
If you've got better plays than that, the next turn or whatever, you're going to be able to, like, this is giving you 2 mana kind of every time
it just gets you off to the races.
Yep. So I think 2-drops are super, super important for this deck. Don't sleep on them. Think about play patterns. ISSHIN also will trigger off non-creature stuff.
Yeah, so one that I really like is Fervent Charge, 1 white, black, red enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn.
Double that up.
It gets +4/+4 until end of turn.
That makes ISSHIN into a 7/8. Basically means can always attack, right?
Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
You don't even need any other creatures. Your commander just gets huge, can 3-tap somebody, and they die.
You can also get your triggers off of things like equipment. So sort of the Animus will trigger twice, get 2 lands. Blade of Selves is pretty cool because Myriad.
Yep.
So if you have, yeah, it's pretty cool.
I love that.
Yeah. So whatever creature you put it on, they won't get their attack trigger because they come in tapped and attacking,
Yeah.
but you'll get double copies of them.
Yep.
So it's just still pretty great to just be like, whatever, my hero of Bladehold, I'm going to make 4 heroes of Bladehold.
Yeah.
Or 4 heroes of Bladehold attacking 2 each, my other opponents. Plus, they'll still make the tokens from the first one and get the battle cry onto my Myriad ones, right? Because I can stack those Myriad triggers first. So,
And if you have anything with ETB effects or anything like a Solemn Simulacrum in the deck or something, then it just automatically becomes very, very good.
oh yeah, Solemn, that's sweet. I don't play Solemn much anymore, but
I think it might have a place in the deck if you include Blade of Selves.
I wanted to put an extra combat warning here. So if you look at Aurelia the War Leader or Scourge of the Throne, they seem great, right?
Yeah.
Let me read them. Whenever Aurelia the War Leader attacks for the first time each turn, untap all creatures you control after this phase. There is an additional combat phase.
Ooh, can I do that twice, Josh?
Yeah, with ISSHIN, it seems like you would be able to because on the attack, it is the first attack, so you will get 2 instances of that. The problem is you won't untap again after the second one. So you don't really get the third combat.
So technically, you would get an extra combat phase, but with that combat phase, everything is tapped. It's like with Morog if you play lands during your first main phase. Like, you'll get that extra combat, but you're not going to be able to untap any of your creatures.
Now, I think Aurelia is probably still good enough to be in the deck, but you just will not get double the extra combats. 1 extra combat still be good, though, because, if you have a Hero of Bladehold, all that battle cry sticks around for that second attack. You get the Hero of Bladehold will trigger 2 more times.
And base level Aurelia does have Vigilance, so she can at least attack again, but it'll just be her.
She can attack on that last one. Yeah, that's right. Scourge of the Throne, a similar thing. Just be aware of that. They're not quite as good. The interesting thing, and we alluded to it earlier, Wolfgar and ISSHIN are subtly different.
Yeah. So with ISSHIN, it says if a creature attacking would cause a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Whereas Wolfgar says if a creature you control attacking would cause a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, it triggers an additional time. That's a lot of me saying trigger. But
but the difference is Wolfgar cares if the creature triggering it is yours.
Yes.
ISSHIN does not care if the creature triggering it is yours.
Which is very interesting and can open things up to a lot of interesting cards that you might not think of.
Yeah, cards that care if your opponents are attacking.
Exactly.
So Brina, the Demagogue, does trigger when you attack, but it also does things when your opponent's attacking. Now, Wolfgar obviously can't go in the same deck with Brina, but if it could, Wolfgar wouldn't interact with it on your opponent's turns.
Correct.
But ISSHIN does.
Yeah.
So now all those triggers double on your opponent's attacks. Now, you have to be careful with things like Brina. Karazakar is another one where you draw cards when your opponents attack each other. You draw double the cards. But they also get the double, right? So they get to draw 2 cards off Karazakar.
And you also lose life with Karazakar, so that can get out of control kind of fast.
Yeah, you got to be careful. Kazul, here's one that's only beneficial to you. It says, whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks, if you're the defending player, create a 3/3 red ogre creature token unless that creature's controller pays 3. So you would get 2 3/3s if they attack you.
ISSHIN cares about creatures attacking.
Yep.
If it's your opponent's attacking, that's fine. But as long as it's a permanent that you control that has that trigger, it'll trigger again. So Kazul will just trigger twice.
And ISSHIN will also trigger on your opponent's attacking, when you have non-creature triggers. So an interesting one is Shiny Impetus. It's 2 and a red for enchantment or to enchant creatures, or enchants a creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and is goaded. Whenever enchanted creature attacks, you create a treasure token. You're still the controller of this. So when your opponent attacks, that is a creature causing a permanent you control.
Yeah. You got Duelist Heritage, which is a 2 and a white, and it gives whenever 1 or more creatures attack, you may have target attacking creature gain double strike until end of turn. So it's still already base level pretty good with ISSHIN because you can just give 2 of your creatures double strike. But you can also mess with combat with other people attacking, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, you can give 2 of their creatures double strike.
Exactly.
Yep. Search the Premises, another one. When a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, investigate. You would investigate twice. All right, here's a question, or the little debate we had. The curses, the curse of blah, blah, blah with the one curse guy, the unluckiest planeswalker or whatever. So there's Curse of Disturbance, which is 2 and a black enchant player. Whenever enchanted player is attacked, create a 2/2 zombie.
Okay.
Each opponent attacking that player does the same. So if I enchant Jimmy,
Yep.
and Murph attacks Jimmy, Murph would make a 2/2, and I would make a 2/2.
Yes.
With a Sheen out, Murph would make 2 2/2s, and I would make 2 2/2s. Curse of Opulence is similar, but it's treasure tokens.
That's gold.
Oh, sorry, it's gold.
Same
tokens.
thing.
Yeah. They're similar, but not the same because
Yeah.
gold can be tapped for like improvise before it goes. Yeah, okay. Do you play those cards in this deck?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if I do the Curse of Disturbance, because the problem is that your opponents are getting that resource and they're getting it before you. But Curse of Opulence...
And you don't want more creatures running around to block you either.
Yeah, because you're trying to get out there, you're trying to attack, trying to get all that combat damage in, because you're a Mardu deck. That's what you want to do.
Well, you want to get your triggers, and if you
Yeah.
can't attack profitably, you can't do that.
Yeah. Curse of Opulence, I think I probably would. I understand the argument against it because you don't want to give your opponents the gold tokens that they can immediately use.
I think that's even bigger deal of them
think
getting
so?
it first than the 2/2s. The 2/2s have summoning sickness, so they couldn't use it till next turn anyway.
Yeah.
Whereas,
But they are profitable blockers, which is pretty annoying.
yeah. But I don't like giving them, because I'm going to play that on somebody in attack, make 2 treasure tokens, and then somebody else is going to attack and make 2 treasure tokens, and they get to use those right now.
But then you got 4 on your turn, Josh.
It's true. This isn't a deck with a lot of instances, though, so I might have like 2, 4, 6 by the time it gets back to me, which is great.
Yeah.
But they might be able to do something crazy with 2 extra mana.
Yeah.
I don't know. That scares me a little, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. It is an interesting dilemma. I feel like it could go either way. I'd want to try it out and see how it plays before I like make a huge decision on that.
All right, well, if anybody tries it out and sees how it plays, please let us know.
Yep.
All right, that's ISSHIN. Pretty cool.
Next up, we've got KOTOSE, the Silent Spider. 3 blue and a black for a human ninja.
Oh, that's a lot of words on that thing. Okay, when KOTOSE ETBs,
Yep.
exile target card other than a basic land from an opponent's graveyard.
Okay. Gotcha.
So when it ETBs, you pick a card that's not basic land in their graveyard and you exile it.
All right, so far so good.
Okay, now you can search that player's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with the same name as that card and exile them. This is not often going to matter.
Yeah.
We'll talk about when it does later. I know some people are like, but Josh, yes, I know. So far in most games, you've just ETB'd, exiled 1 card from their graveyard. Then,
You can look at their hand.
yeah, that player shuffles if you look through when you look through their graveyard and hand. That doesn't matter also. Then for as long as you control KOTOSE, you may play one of the exiled cards. Remember, it's usually only going to be one.
Yep.
One of the exiled cards, and you may spend mana as though it was mana of any color to cast it. So what this really reads as 90% of the time is ETB, pick a card from their graveyard, and you exile it and may cast that card and spend mana as though it were any color to cast that card. It's not super complicated, actually.
Yeah. But it has a lot of words on it, so it seems complicated. But
Okay.
at the end of it, like, does that really do anything?
Well, I mean, it gives you access to some amount of selection from their graveyard.
Okay.
And some amount of card advantage, right? It kind of like Gonti's a thing.
Yeah. But from their graveyard instead of their deck. Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's powerful, but hard. It's also only when it ETBs. It's not like when it attacks also.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, let's talk about the pieces you might need to make this deck work. And we'll acknowledge the fact that it does randomly hose Shadowborn Apostles, Dragon's Approach, Relentless Rats, Persistent Petitioners. Any of those, this deck can have any number of that card,
Yeah.
whatever. But, like, if somebody's playing Shadowborn Apostles, they're going to see KOTOSE in your
And you probably just don't play that.
in your command zone. That, or they're going to be like, they're going to have to be real tricky with, like, don't let a thing go to the graveyard so you can't choose it or whatever.
Yeah.
Tough to do.
Especially with Dragon's Approach.
Or they're just going to be holding up counter magic for that KOTOSE, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing is you need things in your opponent's graveyard because KOTOSE
Yeah.
doesn't do much if you don't have a card to choose. So you got to mill your opponents. There's Maddening Cacophony, which is 1 and a blue. Each opponent mills 8 cards, and it has 3 and a blue kicker. If you kick it, they mill half their library, rounded up.
Oh, that's cool.
Ruin Crab is landfall. All your opponents mill 3 cards. Psychic Corrosion, whenever you draw a card, each opponent puts the top 2 cards of their library into the graveyard. These are just ways before KOTOSE comes out to make sure that there's enough cards in the graveyard from your opponents that you can choose something decent out of one of them.
Yeah, I think it's important for that to occur because oftentimes you will not have the best cards in people's decks in the graveyard by the time you're casting this.
Yeah, I've been in plenty of Commander games these days where honestly, like, there's only like 3 or 4 cards by the time, you're probably casting this on turn 4, maybe even earlier if you get lucky. There might not be much in there. Sometimes there can be nothing, honestly. Like, that can happen.
Maybe you can get like a Cultivate Rampant Growth.
Rampant Growth, yeah.
But you're still not super happy about that. So having a lot of different cards in graveyards gives you a lot of options, and I think that's good.
Mm-hmm. It could be like a fetch land too, right? Like these, it works on, it says play. So now, an interesting rules note about KOTOSE is if it leaves play, if it's removed, blink flickered, you will lose access to the card that it exiled. This is confusing, I know, because it says for as long as you control KOTOSE, you may play one of the exiled cards.
Yeah.
But it's saying that in case you exiled more than one because you searched through their hand library and you're playing a different format or whatever. If KOTOSE exiles a card, let's imagine you got a Rampant Growth.
Yep, I got a Rampant Growth.
I play KOTOSE, I exile the Rampant Growth.
Yep.
And then before I'm able to cast it, you kill KOTOSE.
Nice.
Goes to my command zone. I play KOTOSE back out, and then I choose a Cultivate from your graveyard because you've just been ramping like crazy.
Yep.
I can't play the Rampant Growth anymore.
Correct.
Because that is a different KOTOSE that exiled that one. I still I can play the Cultivate.
Yep.
So that's why Blink Flicker can be good with KOTOSE, because once you've played the card that you exiled, you can get a new card.
Yeah, you can reset it, choose something else, and then keep going.
Right.
But you do lose access to the first one if you haven't played that already.
Right. Which sometimes maybe it's not that good, so you don't care, and you've milled other things later, and you're like, oh, I want that card now.
Yeah.
So there's Thassa Deep Dwelling, lets you Blink Flicker something on end step. Ghostly Flicker becomes quite good. Do 2 things, maybe one of your lands so that you can get some extra mana. Deadeye Navigator is a classic one.
Yep, the Conjurer's Closets of the world again. Yeah.
Okay, it's not super revolutionary, but that's a thing you can do.
Yep.
You had an interesting idea here, which is this is super Murph.
Yep.
Okay, it's Shuffle Punishers. What do we mean by Shuffle Punishers?
Okay, so what KOTOSE does is KOTOSE lets you shuffle, right? It lets your opponent shuffle. In fact, it forces your opponents to shuffle.
Right.
So what if we run cards that, punish your opponents for shuffling? If we have something like Psychogenic Probe or Kosi's Trickster, those will punish your opponents for shuffling. Kosi's Trickster will get a +1/+1 counter. Psychogenic Probe will deal 2 damage to them.
2 mana for an artifact. Whenever a spell or ability causes a player to shuffle his or her library, Psychogenic Probe deals 2 damage to him or her.
So you're making your opponent shuffle their library. Psychogenic Probe deals 2 damage to them.
Boom! Take that!
Take that. I've always wanted this to be an archetype. There's just not enough cards to support it.
There's really only 2.
There's really only 2.
This and Kosi's Trickster.
There's like a couple in red, but...
Well, we're not in red.
Yeah, maybe if they did a blue, black, red commander that's made your opponent shuffle their library, then we could.
I like Shuffle Punishers in general because people tutor and they fetch and stuff. They should take a little bit of damage. This should do like 8 damage or something.
There you go.
It still wouldn't be broken.
There you go. don't crack your fetch lens.
I will say, beware of your opponent's bounce and flicker with this deck because they can get their stuff back, right? So because you stole it out of their graveyard, but they still own that card. So if they've got like a Sword of Hearth and Home, they can flicker it back to their side. Or if they have just like Chain of Vapor, Mystic Confluence, they can bounce those cards off your battlefield back to their hands.
Yep.
Homeward Path will give them the stuff back. So just, you have to be a little careful. I think if a deck is playing a lot of bounce or even just in a lot of blue, I would think about choosing cards that are not permanents. They just won't be able to steal back that effect.
Yeah. Yeah, but overall, it seems like with this card, it's just a lot of effort to try to get one card that may or may not help you.
It seems like they've been trying to figure out a way to make this sort of send triplets idea work. They tried with Xanathar as well. This is another angle on like...
Just try to make it a little bit more fair, a little bit more fun. But
how do we make it more fun for you to play with your opponent's decks?
Yeah.
This is a fine way. I don't think it feels necessarily that bad for the player. They're like, okay, you got a thing out of my graveyard to use, so that doesn't feel that bad, but it's also like not super powerful. I wish it had an attack trigger also or something. They
couldn't fit it on the text box of the card, Josh.
They don't need... Why'd they put in that stuff about like search their hand library and graveyard for cards with the same name? Who cares about that? Like, why do that?
You do get a look at their hands. That's not nothing.
Boy, that's even worse, because then you got to remember what's in their hand.
I don't like playing with cards that reveal opponent's hands.
This card just reads like stuff takes forever. Because first of all, you're like, okay, do the thing. Look through everything. Are you even going to look?
Yeah. And
you're probably not. You're just like, whatever, shuffle, let me see your hand.
you can also look through their deck. Just saying.
You could just to see if they have that
Just to see what
combo
they
or
got.
not.
Yeah. If you've memorized their deck list, you can be like, I know what you have.
Do you have Exquisite Blood and
No, they definitely have that because
and
you can look at
Sanguine
their
Bond?
hands,
Let
too.
me see. Yeah. All right. Okay. On to the next one.
Next one.
KYODAI, Soul of Kamigawa.
Ooh.
This is another one of those costs, is monocolored, but also 5-color identity
Aw.
cards. Yeah. 3 and a white for a 3/3 flash flying dragon spirit. When KYODAI enters the battlefield, another target permanent gains indestructible for as long as you control KYODAI. And then it has an activated ability of WUBERG, KYODAI gets +5/+5 until end of turn.
Huh.
So if you have, let's see, 5, 10, 15, 20 mana in exactly WUBERG 4 times.
Yep.
Commander damage somebody out in the air.
I like it. 10 out of 10 would play again.
This is an interesting one, and I had a hard time trying to figure out, like, what would this deck look like?
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of open-ended.
Yeah, I think that was intentional with the design. I think they just wanted you to be like, okay, well, if I want to build around a specific card, if I want to build around a couple specific cards or something like that, it has that 5-color identity for you, so you can include whatever cards you do need to make that support work, and it gives something indestructible as long as you control your commander, so it can help keep that important piece around.
Yeah, so it led us to start thinking about, like, what kind of stuff is indestructibly inclined? Like, what wants to be indestructible? And then, of course, we got real mean with it immediately. And we're like, you know what wants to be indestructible? Navinral's Disc. Boom Pile. You know, these things that just... Navinral's Disc is interesting. It's 4 mana for a artifact. It comes into the battlefield tapped, but you can then pay 1 and tap it and destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments.
Notably does not sacrifice itself.
Yeah, so... if you got indestructible on it, you can do that and then
Do it again.
do it again. Everybody will be real happy. Boom.
And if you make your commander indestructible, it'll be even better because you can do it as much as you want.
Well, once per turn, unless you
Well,
can tap it. Yeah.
once per turn, and everyone
This
will
is
dislike you.
Boom Pile is 4 mana for an artifact. You tap it and flip a coin. If you win the flip, destroy all non-land permanents.
Similar type of effects.
Yeah, you put Serenity on here.
Yeah, so Serenity is a 1 and a white enchantment. During your upkeep, destroy all artifacts and enchantments that can't be regenerated.
So this is brutal because KYODAI is not an enchantment or artifact, so it'll just protect it until KYODAI is gone.
So then your opponents, well, not just your opponents, nobody can have any artifacts or enchantments as long as this is in play.
yeah, it's supposed to destroy itself, so it only sort of does that once, but, you know, KYODAI says no. You put something World Slayer.
Something World Slayer. Well, World Slayer only if you can give your commander or something else indestructible.
World Slayer is an artifact equipment. I believe it costs 5 to equip.
Yeah.
And it says whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, destroy all permanents other than World Slayer.
Yeah.
However, if the thing that is equipped with it has been given indestructible by KYODAI,
Then you have it again and can do it again.
well, you don't even have to do it. Well, that's pretty tough. It's pretty tough because you'd have to figure out a way to get World Slayer off the thing.
Yeah.
I think you actually World Slayer onto KYODAI.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
And then you've got another creature out. Because World Slayer says all permanent, so it's lands too, right?
Yeah.
So then you attack and hit somebody with KYODAI with World Slayer on it. Mm-hmm. It destroys everything, but your other creature was indestructible because KYODAI was out. And now you just have whatever that other creature was, and nobody else has lands or anything.
Or creatures, or they have nothing, and you have a creature that you can attack with.
Sure.
So lots of fun. We're finding all sorts of fun synergies with this card.
I mean, you know, they give us cards and we're supposed to try and figure out what we're going to do with it. So I did think of the Stop Hitting Yourself deck, which does like indestructible.
Yeah.
So Boros Reckoner with indestructible is good.
Oh, that's so good.
Because whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target creature or player. So, you know, you either sit it back as a blocker and no one can ever attack you because you're just like, whatever, I'll block the Boros Reckoner, give it indestructible, and then you'll take that much damage, or I'll deal that much damage to a creature out there.
We know how good like Brash Taunter is because that has indestructible on it
Yep.
already, right? So just put that on any creature you could ever want or need. Profit.
Yeah. Also, you know, if you Blasphemous Act or something like that, it can be pretty brutal with cards like that.
Yep.
I like the cards. I mean, when I say I like these cards, I really want them to work in a deck. That's what I mean. I was doing this because you're the hipsters here and I want to like impress him.
Yeah.
So Pariah or Pariah's Shield.
I feel like we talk about these cards every time.
Really?
We do something together. Yes.
Because I'm always trying to impress
We're going to
them
make
with
it
their
work.
cards. So redirect. So they're both, one's an equipment, one's an enchantment. You put it on a creature, and then you redirect to enchanted creature. All damage dealt to you.
But if that creature has indestructible,
KYODAI just goes boom. It could take any amount of damage, so I can't die to damage. Ha!
nice. I like that a lot.
Probably worth putting a bad card in your deck for. There's got to be something you can do with Audric, Lunarch Marshal, right?
Maybe.
It'll give all your stuff flying and indestructible. Oh, that's what you do with World Slayer. If your other creature's Audric,
Sure. We can do that.
right?
Give them flying, indestructible.
Well, now KYODAI would also get indestructible because it would get it from Audric.
Yes. So then you'd actually be able to keep your board creature-wise, that is.
You know, you could just play Avacyn.
That would probably be easier.
But it's 8 mana, so maybe not. This World Slayer is 10 mana, but in an installment plan. Yeah. Yeah.
It's fun.
I mean, this is an open-ended commander, so I think there's other things you can probably do with it. It feels like it's just going to be like a catch-all commander for like wacky strategies.
Yeah. Once again, if you're building around one specific card that obviously isn't your commander, you're going to want this probably as your commander so you can keep it around as much as possible.
Yeah, it's probably just going to end up being like combo-y or good stuff decks that just run this as like a protect my...
But I want to see like a little bit more jank types of decks run this so that they can have that whatever weird enchantment from Ice Age.
All those 5-color jank decks that we see running around out there all the time. This is your new commander.
There you go.
It's not Kenrith anymore. It's
show me your cool jank decks
Spoiler
built
alert,
around a specific
it's
card.
still going to be Kenrith that they're using. Yeah, sorry, I hate to tell you. All right, what's up next?
All right, next up we got Naomi, Pillar of Order. 3 white-black, legendary creature, human advisor. When Naomi enters the battlefield or attacks, if you control an artifact and an enchantment, create a 2/2 white samurai creature token with vigilance.
Okay, so Orzhov, artifact plus enchantment, token go wide. This is...
Yeah, so this card's like kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's not actually that advantageous for you to be going all these different directions. Oh, I want artifact synergies and enchantment synergies and
then
go
I need
wide
to make
synergies.
use of the tokens, yeah.
Yeah, so I think the best way to do this card specifically is we can either include cards in it that are both artifacts and enchantments, like Whip of Erebos or Spear of Heliod. They're both legendary enchantment artifacts, so it automatically fulfills.
Yeah, both conditions in one card.
Exactly. Or, honestly, most decks just kind of have artifacts randomly lying around anyway. You got your mana rocks.
Yeah.
You can run artifact lands if you really want to or something like that. So I think this probably wants to play more around in the enchantment space.
Or you probably want to add a few more enchantments than you normally would, just because, yeah, like you said, most decks these days are having at least 10 mana rocks, so you're liable to get one of those out.
So I think it's pretty easy to just focus on the enchantments and the go wide part, and then just have probably a higher amount of artifacts than you normally would.
Interesting. So let's talk about the blink flicker aspect, because every commander we've talked about so far feels like that is one of the things you want to do. And this one's no different.
If it says when it enters the battlefield, do thing X, you probably want to flicker it.
So you've got Ephemerate, Conjurer's Closet, Teleportation Circle. We've talked about a bunch of these cards already. Obviously, that's the way you're going to make extra tokens. And then you're going to want all the token support cards. So Cathar's Crusade, Anointed Procession, Divine Visitation. There's not a lot of ground here that we have not tread over many times before. It is just a Orzhov token commander, and it's just slightly different in that it wants you to jump through more hoops, and it's a 5-drop. I mean, the cards are just not very good.
Yeah, it's not great. I still think it can be fun. Like, try to go wide with some cool enchantments, and I think you can definitely take games with it. But yeah, like you were saying with some other cards earlier, I don't think it can go past like a 6 or a 7, even at max optimization.
All right. The next one is a Boros card. So let's see if that one can go above a 6 or a 7.
There we go.
It's RAIYUU, Storm's Edge. 4 mana, 2 red, white. For a 3/3, human samurai, first strike. Whenever a samurai or warrior you control attacks alone, untap it. If it's the first combat phase of the turn, there is an additional combat phase after this phase. So extra combats on sort of an exalted, but only for samurai and warriors.
Yeah. So at face value, this card itself is a samurai. So if you attack alone with it, then you will get that extra combat phase, which is nice.
I think you really want to try and find warriors or samurai, and spoiler alert, there's not a lot of samurai, so it's mostly warriors that have like good attack triggers, so that way you can attack with one of them twice and get their attack trigger twice.
I think that's why they put the warrior rider on it, so that
they had to. They're like, if it's just samurai, there's like,
there's just not enough.
30 total cards maybe, and most of them aren't very good. So Lelia, the Blade Reforged, is 2 in a red for a 2/2 Spirit Warrior with haste. Whenever Lelia attacks, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn, so you get to do that twice once on each attack.
Yep.
And then whenever you exile one or more cards from your library and or graveyards, put a 1/1 counter on Lelia. So you would go attack with her. She's attacking alone. Exile the card, put a 1/1. She's a 3/3 now.
Yep.
And now untap her because she attacked alone. Attack again. Exile a second card. Put another counter. She's a 4/4 now.
So get your cards. She gets big pretty quick with it. I think that's a good include in this deck.
Yep. You're probably running equipment artifacts just because you are in a Boros deck, so you're going to have a certain amount of that. Wylith seems good because the attack trigger is if you draw a card for each aura and or equipment attached to Wylith. So if you got 2 or 3 equipment on a Wylith attacked, you're going to draw those cards, untap it, do it again.
Yeah, I like that because I don't think this deck specifically wants to go wide. I think it just wants to go tall. Just like try to make one thing enormously big and just run over your opponents with it with that extra combat phase because it does have to attack alone.
Morag is pretty good, actually, because it's a warrior. And so you can just attack with it.
Morag's a warrior?
Yeah, a Minotaur warrior. So you can just attack with Morag and then let RAIYUU untap and give the extra combat phase. And then the second one, you can attack with everything, and then you'll actually get the third attack with Morag, right?
Interesting. Second main, do your thing, play the lands, and then you have another attack with Morag and the rest.
You don't
of
get
your
another
board.
main phase after that other Morag attack. So.
Correct. Morag's strangely worded, but you do get lots of combat phases with it, which I think is a lot of fun. Speaking of a lot of fun, I like Combat Celebrant.
Yeah.
So it is 2 and a red, 4/1. If it hasn't been exerted this turn, you may exert it as it attacks. When you do, untap all other creatures you control, and after this phase, there's an additional combat phase.
Is a warrior.
It is a warrior. Notably, so you can exert it and with RAIYUU get an extra combat phase.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't exert it on the first one. You just
Correct.
attack, RAIYUU untaps it, and then on the second attack, you exert it.
Correct, because
Now
if
get the
you
third.
do it on the first attack phase, then that's probably not great because, again, like with Morag, you care about when the Combat Celebrant gets untapped.
Right, you'd only untap it the one time, not both times. So this third attack, you wouldn't get to untap it unless you sort of sequence things correctly.
Yeah, you got to watch wording and stuff with these extra combat phase cards.
Yeah, that's why you gotta, like, Aurelia is also just not going to be as great here.
Yeah.
And things like Godo and things like that. Just watch out. It's a similar thing to ISSHIN that we were talking about earlier. You got to, because it's not just the extra combat, it's the untapping part that you kind of have to pay attention to.
Yep.
Yeah, we talked about maybe it's probably like a Samurai Voltron commander, bunch of sword ofs.
Yeah, find some cool warriors, find some cool samurai, put lots of swords on them.
I looked at all of them. We just talked about most of the cool ones.
Oh,
There
that was
aren't a
most of the
lot.
cool ones? Okay, well, these cards then, and then suit them all up.
But sort of. Animist, Hearth and Home, Fire
Feast
and
and
Ice.
Famine is
Feast and
Josh
Famine is the
quite
best
special.
one. Yeah, that's going to be good because with the extra combats, you're going to get extra untapping, extra drawing with Fire and Ice, extra damage, blah,
Yeah,
blah, blah.
not to mention it lets you punch through.
Outside the tribe, you can play Maskwood Nexus or maybe Mirror Entity, and this would allow you to turn non-samurai, non-warriors into samurais or warriors and kind of take advantage of that. So imagine a Sun Titan that is now, has a Maskwood Nexus out, so it can attack twice, get its trigger twice. A Tali, that's another pretty good one.
Yeah, I think those are good includes as well, specifically because you had mentioned there's not that many great warriors or samurai, and you're probably filling out the deck with other creatures to just get you to a critical mass of creatures because you are going to be attacking a lot. So I really like having something like Mirror Entity, which you're probably going to want to like finish the game. But
The problem
can also
is,
help
like,
you.
if you put a bunch of non-samurais and non-warriors into your deck,
Yeah, you probably don't want
those are
too
just
many.
not as good if you don't get Maskwood Nexus or Mirror Entity out. So I don't know that I want a lot of them.
Yeah, maybe just a couple.
Yeah, I mean, this card is Borosy, so it's going to pay you off for being attack fighty.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
I
what
like
it does. I think ISSHIN is way better and does
Yes.
a very similar thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But speaking of Boros commanders that Josh doesn't like.
His name's Josh, too. You should know this. We call him Murph, but that's because his name is Josh Murphy.
I don't think you like this card either. RISONA ASARI Commander. It's 1 red whites. It's Boros.
It's called a sorry commander. This commander is sorry.
Yeah, it's sorry that it's so bad.
I've never even put that together.
All right, let's read the card. Legendary creature, human samurai. Oh, it's a samurai.
A sorry commander. You know, when I was a kid, if you called something sorry, it was calling it like lame.
Oh, well, it's probably not that great.
Yeah.
All right, you ready for this? You
I
ready for
guess
this?
so.
It's a 3/3 with haste. So far, so good.
Yep.
And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, if it doesn't have an indestructible counter on it, put an indestructible counter on it. But whenever combat damage is dealt to you, remove an indestructible counter from this card.
So it is sort of temporarily gets indestructible sometimes, and is a 3/3 with haste. 3 mana 3/3 with haste. I mean, I think the first thing we all thought of when we saw, hey, there's an indestructible counter is, can I move that counter somewhere else?
Yeah, the problem is that red and white aren't really your counter moving colors.
Yeah. There's like a couple sort of janky ways to do it. One is nesting grounds.
Yep.
It's a land. You can pay 1, tap it, and move a counter from a permanent you control to another permanent another permanent. I guess you can make your opponent's thing indestructible if you want. Only as a sorcery.
This should be fun.
And then there's Ozolith. So when a creature leaves the battlefield, if it had counters, you put those counters on the Ozolith. And then the beginning of combat on your turn, if the Ozolith has counters on it, you can move those counters onto another target creature.
So you can get an indestructible counter on something that's not this commander.
Yeah. You can only move it onto creatures. In this case, Nesting Grounds moves it on to non-creatures, which is, I think, more interesting.
I think Nesting Grounds is definitely better because with the Ozolith, the creature has to leave play.
The problem is you're in Boros,
Yeah.
so finding a land is pretty tough.
Yeah.
At least in Boros, finding an artifact is possible, Enlightened Tutor and things like that.
Yeah, because with the land, all you got is like Expedition Map, and that's it.
Yeah, so, okay. Those are the only 2 ways to move the indestructible counter anywhere.
Yeah.
And if you take the indestructible counter, then RISONA...
Yeah.
The sorry commander is not indestructible anymore. So you might want to proliferate that counter before you move it. You could do so with Sword of Truth or Justice, maybe Grateful Apparition, Karn's Bash. I mean, this is just pointless to talk about. Like, no one's going to do that. Like, what do you have to do? Attack, hit them, proliferate the counter, then move the counter, and you're playing all this crazy, weird janky cards.
Yeah, we have like 2 cards that can move counters, right? And then we have all these other cards that can proliferate. But you only have those 2 things that can move counters. And what are you going to move it onto?
And if you proliferate it, I guess it's okay to have 2 because you could lose one when they hit you with combat damage.
Yeah.
Let me read the wording on the card, though. Can they take more than 1 at a time? Whenever combat damage is dealt to you, remove an indestructible counter.
I feel like that's
RISONA.
with different creatures.
So if they hit you with 3 creatures, you would remove 3 indestructible
so.
counters? Oh, my lord. Okay, so that's even worse.
It looks like a good draft card.
Yeah, I had it in the draft we did here, and it was quite good. I will tell you that. Okay, whatever. Let's continue to bowl through it here so we can move on to the next card. Maybe Board Wipe Tribal?
All right, now we're talking.
So, here's what because it has haste.
Yeah.
So what you probably want to do is like Board Wipe, cast RISONA, attack, get the indestructible counter. Nobody's got any creatures. They can't hit you and take the counter off. They play a bunch of creatures. You go, bam, Board Wipe, because she's indestructible. Attack.
Yep.
Bam, Board Wipe. Attack. Somewhere in there, maybe play some, equipment and stuff. So because at 3 per 3 damage per turn, it's going to take quite a while to take everyone else, and they're going to be mad if you Board Wipe for the 3rd turn in a row.
Yep. Audric, we could give all our stuff indestructible. That seems like a way easier way than moving the counter, honestly.
Audric makes another appearance on this show.
Yeah.
And also so does World Slayer as a possible thing you can do with RISONA.
These are all mean cards, Josh. I'm just reading these cards. So we have...
Listen, this card is bad, so I'm just trying to figure out what you could do with it that's powerful.
You put Yoko Hops and Obliterate.
And Bearer of the Heavens. Let us not
Bearer
forget.
of the Heavens.
You said World Slayer before that. You're the one.
World
that
Slayer is
that.
a fun card.
So those are cards that destroy everything.
Lands too.
And so, if you could get Audric out with RISONA, you could give everything indestructible and haste. And then
that is,
Yeah, and then you could destroy everything else, and then you would still have your stuff.
Yeah.
And that seems like no one will like you, but
you could do it.
Even if you pulled that off, honestly, and I was playing against you, I'd be like, you deserve the win because that's crazy what you just did.
If you roll up with this as your commander, I'll just give you the win.
Oh, well, that's easy. I won't give you the win. But if you pull something cool off, I won't be mad. I'd be like, yep, you have to do that because there's no way that card wins otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. Enough time with ASARI Commander.
Yep. Totally the best card. This card is not sorry. This is a pretty good card. SATORU UMEZAWA. 1 blue and a black. Legendary creature ninja. Whenever you activate a ninjutsu ability, look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put 1 into your hand, rest on the bottom in any order. This ability triggers only once each turn. But probably more importantly, each creature card in your hand has ninjutsu 2 blue black.
So it gives ninjutsu to any creature you've got in your hand for 4 mana.
Any creature.
Okay, if you haven't watched Gavin Verhey's ninjutsu rules hacks video, we linked it in one of our other videos. We'll link it here. Look in the show notes.
Yep.
There's a bunch of stuff you can do with ninjutsu, and we don't want to get too bogged down in the rules of it. But suffice it to say, if you can have an unblocked creature, you can do some crazy stuff. The first thing you can obviously do is just cheat out crazy things.
Like a Blightsteel.
Blightsteel is the first card everybody thought of because you're unblocked.
Yeah.
By definition, Blightsteel is an 11/11 with indestructible, infect, and trample. So
You
kill
one-shot somebody with
they're
it.
dead now. Sepulchral Primordial is also pretty good. Just bring a bunch of stuff out of graveyards. Void Winnower is another one that could come out. It That Betrays is another one we talked about. Now, I want to be clear. It That Betrays, you do not get attack triggers when you ninjutsu something out. It's already been attacking. So
It's already tapped, already attacking.
Yeah, so it doesn't attack triggers are when it attacks. But still, you get an It That Betrays out onto the battlefield for 4 mana.
Which is pretty good. Yeah, they don't go away at end of turn or anything. They're just on the board now for 4 mana.
It's crazy. You can do like the big sea creatures.
Yeah.
So like Spawning Kraken, Trench Gorger. Spawning Kraken makes 9/9s when it hits.
Trench Gorger, you can possibly one-shot somebody.
Yeah.
If you got enough lands.
It says when Trench Gorger ETBs, you may search your library for any number of land cards, exile them, then shuffle your library. Trench Gorger's power and toughness each become equal to the number of cards exiled this way.
So someone's at like 20, 25 or something. Trench Gorger also becomes like a one-shot.
That's a lot of lands. I wanted to have some lands for the rest
you
of the
will
game.
have some lands. You have like 35
I have
to
at least
40
4 in play,
somewhere.
probably.
Yeah, exactly.
You can also just surprise them. So there are cards that, like, when they deal combat damage to a player, that player loses half their life, rounded up, like Virtus the Veiled.
Or Eben Blade Reaper. Those do basically the same thing. Once they hit somebody, that player loses half their life.
There's also combo-y stuff you can do. So it costs 4 mana to ninjutsu something out. There are cards that when they ETB will untap lands.
Yeah.
So you can be up on mana. So like Palinkron, when it enters the battlefield, it's a 7 mana spell, but when it enters the battlefield, you untap 7 lands.
Yep. So you have 4 mana to ninjutsu it, and then it'll untap 7 lands.
So you float the excess.
Yep.
And now you've got 3 extra left over.
So as long as you have something in your hands that has like ninjutsu 2 or something, then you can ninjutsu that in, bounce the Palicron back, because ninjutsu, you can activate it again.
That's the thing. And
that's the crazy part.
I think on Gavin's video, he talks about this, but let's imagine you attack with a creature. It is unblocked. You say, okay, before damage, I'm going to ninjutsu in Palinkron for the 4 mana.
Yep.
I'm going to untap the 7 lands. I'll float the 3 in response, right? Now, Palinkron's in the battlefield. Still before damage, I'm going to ninjutsu, because Palinkron's still an unblocked attacking creature.
Yep.
I'm going to ninjutsu out, Mistblade Shinobi, which has a ninjutsu cost of 1.
Yep.
So I use 1 of the 3 mana I had floating. I still have 2 mana floating and 7 lands untapped.
So now you're up 1 or 2 mana, depending on if you have ninjutsu 1 or ninjutsu 2 or something.
Now I
like
ninjutsu in Palinkron onto the Mistblade Shinobi.
And you can do this an infinite number of times for an infinite amount of mana. Now, the interesting thing about that is you're in the middle of combat, so that mana is going to go away at end of turn.
You need an instant to take advantage of it.
You need an instant to take advantage of it. But that's not that hard to do. You could Stroke of Genius somebody to death, something like that.
Yep. Usually you can draw them out with one of the blue draw spells is kind of the best way to go. But there are other things to do. It depends on what your other colors are and things like that.
Yeah. Infinite mana is just good.
In general, if you have infinite mana, it's not too hard to figure out a way to win from there.
Yeah, find a mana dump, mana sink, you'll be good to go.
You can do this with Peregrine Drake, but you won't be up mana if you do like a 1 mana ninjutsu like Mistblade Shinobi. But that'll just give you infinite ETBs, so you can maybe pull something crazy off with Intruder Alarm or something like that.
Yeah, which is also quite relevant.
Or if you have lands that tap for more than 1 mana. So, So if you have a Temple of the False God or a bounce land, taps for 2 mana, Peregrine Drake untaps 5, but actually that could be equal 6 mana because of the tap.
So you could also use Peregrine Drake to combo off from there.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the combo stuff that you can do.
So this card's kind of nuts.
How do you like this copy? Repeat TB. Ooh. Yeah. Repeat TB.
Repeat TB.
So I think one of the... Yep. I'm a professional. I get paid to do this. All right. Repeat ETBs is a good way to use, because of the sort of bounce a thing back that's already been out. So like Mole Drifter is really good in this because it's also a flyer.
Yeah.
So like the previous turn, let's say you ninjutsu'd out a Mole Drifter and now it's a 2/2 flyer. You can be like, okay, attack before damage, ninjutsu out a Gray Merchant of Asphodel.
Yeah.
Get my life and damage to everybody. Then ninjutsu the Mole Drifter back in. I mean, that's 8 mana, but draw the 2 cards. So ETB creatures become really strong because you generally want them back in your hand. And because getting them out only costs 4 mana, Agent of Treachery, like, it's brutal to just be like, boom, and then ninjutsu again, and now it's back in my hand to use again later.
Yeah, the cheap cost in conjunction with the ability to just rebuy your stuff by bouncing it back to hand, I think is very, very powerful.
So yeah, SATORU, Umezawa. I mean, those Umezawas, they're pretty good.
Pretty good. How do you think this compares to, like, Yuriko?
Well, I think Yuriko's totally different and better.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah, Yuriko's a CEDH deck, and Satoru maybe is, because Dimir decks just kind of can get there.
Plus, like, you can get infinite mana, and that tends to be something that you could do in CDH and win with pretty easily.
But Satoru's not a ninja deck in that you don't play ninjas in it. Just a few.
Yeah.
Maybe for this combo stuff, whereas Yuriko plays a lot more ninja stuff. I don't know. I think Yuriko's probably at the top end more powerful, but you never know.
I think it's interesting because I think your bottom end for both these decks are exactly the same, where you have 1/1s that can't be blocked, whereas your top end is completely different.
Yeah.
Because instead of like Treasure Cruise or what's the Delve extra turn, Temporal Trespass, that's your top. Yeah, that's your top end in Yuriko, whereas with Satoru Umezawa, your top end is Blightsteel, which I think is a little bit more fun.
Sure.
Personally.
Until it hits you.
Yeah, okay, maybe I won't like it after I get one shot by a Blightsteel, but...
You haven't played enough with Craig, honestly, if you think that's more fun.
I like Blightsteel. I don't care what anybody says.
All right, let's talk about the next one, which is Satsuki, the Living Lore.
Ooh.
It is 2 mana, a green and a white for a 1/3 human druid. You can tap it to put a lore counter on each saga you control. Activate only as a sorcery. When Satsuki dies, choose up to 1. Return target saga or enchantment creature you control to its owner's hand, or return target saga card from your graveyard to your hand.
Huh, okay. So this is clearly a saga deck. That's what it wants. It says, hey, play some sagas. So Josh, what are probably the best sagas to go in this deck?
Okay, so Saga Tribal.
I can tell you're not overly thrilled with this.
Well, I just want to say there are only 21 sagas in green-white, and that's counting all the sagas from Neon Dynasty.
Yes.
So the fact that it's 2-color sagas is pretty disappointing because
Does that include colorless sagas?
Yes, which is only Urza Saga, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it does. So there's just not a lot to choose from. Even if you put every single one in your deck, that we usually say you want about 25 of something to really be doing that thing, and probably more. And that means you're playing a bunch of bad sagas, because if there's only 21 of a thing...
You don't have much of a choice. You just play whatever you can get your hands on.
Only 5 of them are probably good enough to play in Commander, if that, right? Like, it's usually like the top 20% of cards or 10% of cards are Commander caliber. Okay, anyway. So... yeah, Satsuki basically helps you get to the top end of the saga, or the end of the, gets you to chapter 2 and therefore 3 faster. So the best ones are like Elspeth Conquers Death, Mending of Dominaria, maybe first Eroan games. I'll just read Elspeth Conquers Death. 3 white, chapter 1, exile target permanent and opponent controls with converted mana cost 3 or greater. Chapter 2, non-creature spells your opponent's cast cost 2 more to cast until your next turn. Chapter 3, return target creature or planeswalker from your graveyard to the battlefield. Put a 1/1 counter or a loyalty counter on it.
That's not bad.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously have to do some setup for that to happen. But, turn being like, boom, play it, exile a thing, tap my Satsuki. Now all your non-creature spells cost 1 more until my next turn. Like, not bad.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And then the turn after that, then...
hopefully you got something in there to get back.
Yeah, you got something there to get back, and then you're done with the saga.
Well, I mean, Satsuki can die and then get the saga back out. So return target saga card from your graveyard to your hand. Oh, not back out, back to your hand. So I guess you can cast it again. That is a thing that can happen. At least there is a recursion element to it.
Correct. Yeah.
I want to say that the Neon Dynasty sagas, they flip over into creatures after they're done.
Yeah, I feel like that's what you would want to run with this, because you want to get through all of those things as quickly as possible.
Right.
But there's not that many great ones.
Yeah, the best one we found is the restoration of Eiganjo.
I think so.
Chapter 1, search your library for a basic planes card, reveal it, put it into your hand.
Okay.
So chapter 1, draw a card. Chapter 2, you may discard a card. When you do, return target permanent card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So that can be the planes.
You can discard the planes, get the planes back. All right.
So that's a white rampant growth, kind of, for 3 mana. Chapter 3 is you exile this saga, then return it to the battlefield under your control, and it turns into a 3/4 vigilance called Architect of Restoration. And it says, whenever Architect of Restoration attacks or blocks, create a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. So you get a 3/4 that attacks and makes 1/1s. I mean, this is not bad for a 3 mana spell, and it's going to get there pretty fast with Satsuki, but it's not like Wow, crazy.
Yeah,
Fine.
like it's fine, but the problem is like that's the best of the best.
Yeah.
From this new set. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of like something like the first Aroan games a little bit better, where it just has more chapters to go through.
Yeah. You
so
get a
then
little more value.
You get a little bit more value. It's like, okay, well, you can go through all these chapters, and then motoring through them is like a little bit better, I think.
First round games, if you get to the end, what you end up with is a 4/4. You drew 2 cards and you made a gold token.
Yeah, and which are all pretty good.
Yeah.
You don't seem convinced, Josh.
One thing you can do is counter manipulation, so you can maybe remove some of the lore counters, and this will kind of be able to keep you like at a certain level on the saga if you want to. There's only a couple cards that do it though: Power Conduit and Ferropede.
Yeah, there's some in other colors, but as far as the colors that we have to work with this commander, green and white, there's not too many.
First Aroan games kind of works for this, right? Like you make a 1/1, then chapter 2 is put 3 1/1 counters on something.
Yep.
And then chapter 3 is if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw 2 cards. So what you probably want to do is get to there, then Power Conduit back to 2, then Satsuki it back to 3,
Yep.
then Ferropede it back to 2.
Yep.
But you have to get both of the cards that remove the counters. There's not very many, so it's hard to sort of keep it in that wheelhouse. I mean, you could kind of do the same thing with Elspeth, maybe keep everybody exile stuff over and over and keep everybody from their spells costing more.
Yeah, I think probably the more powerful thing with sagas is doing the Power Conduit thing of removing a counter and then putting the counter back on.
Why doesn't Satsuki remove a counter?
Yeah, I think she could do either or. Just choose to put one thing on everything or choose to remove one from everything. So that way you have some decisions that you have to make.
Either choose to proliferate all your sagas.
Exactly.
Or choose to unproliferate your sagas.
Yeah, just like back them all up or put them all back in. That way you at least have...
Amateur proliferate. That's the...
Amateur proliferate.
I was thinking like,
that's a word
the opposite
probably.
Of pro?
Amateurs.
Proliferate. Unliferate?
Sure, unliferate.
Deliferate. I don't know, but you should, yeah. I think Satsuki, you're right. It would have been cool if it could do either one.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not what happens here. There is some saga recursion, obviously, on Satsuki where you can sacrifice it or whatever and get the saga back to your hand. And of course, the sagas put themselves in the graveyard once they've hit chapter 3.
Yeah.
So that can be useful. Although the Neon Dynasty sagas turn into creatures, so you'd have to sack them, which you probably don't want to do because it goes to your hand. Maybe you do, because then you get to replay it and get all the chapters again.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a lot to do to sort of jump through hoops. But if you have like Phyrexian Astronaut's Altar, you probably want those in the deck anyway, so you can sack Satsuki when you need to just so you have control of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this was cool. You came up with a couple ways to sort of recur Satsuki over and over. So Gift of Immortality is a cool one.
Yeah, so it's 2 and a white for an aura. Whenever enchanted creature dies, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control, and you get Gift of Immortality back to the battlefield attached to that creature at the beginning of the next end step.
So you sack it, Gift of Immortality brings it back on end step, then on the next player's turn, sack it, bring it back on end step. So you could actually get a bunch of your sagas back to your hand.
Exactly.
Or even bounce them back to your hand from play.
Because I think the biggest problem with this card is that you don't want it actually dying and going back to the command zone, because now you cannot proliferate the lore counters on any of your stuff. You don't have that control anymore.
Yeah,
and then
it makes you tap it, so the summoning sickness hurts
exactly.
too.
So when you have to replay it, you pay the 4 mana, you replay it, wait a whole turn if you don't have Lightning Greaves or anything, and then you can start redoing stuff over and over again. But if you have Gift of Immortality, something like that, then Satsuki dies, comes back, you're good to go next turn.
Yeah, you get some value out of your graveyard, and then it still can be activated.
Yep.
You probably also want to run like Replenish, Resurgent Belief, Open the Vault, stuff that gets all your enchantments back onto the battlefield all at once.
Yeah, exactly. I think that type of stuff is very key to making this deck function.
Still, it's pretty disappointing that it's only in 2 colors.
Yeah.
Because I think in order to make sagas work, it needs to be in 3, probably more.
Yeah.
There just haven't been enough.
It's so rough because this is 2 mana and it has so much text on it and it very, very clearly cares about sagas, but it's not actually that amazing.
A saga deck is probably better off running GO-SHINTAI as the commander. Right?
Honestly, even if you were like, hey, I really want to stick to the green-white sagas, you probably just run Sithis.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, like Sithis is just better than Satsuki.
And then you just turn it into an enchantment deck, and then...
Anyway, what's the next card, Josh?
All right, it is Tameshi, Reality Architect. This is a cool one. 2 and a blue for a Moonfolk Wizard, 2/3. Whenever one or more non-creature permanents are returned to hand, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Then you can play, it has an activated ability of X and a white. Return a land you control to its owner's hand. That's part of the cost.
Yep.
Return target artifact or enchantment card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery.
Okay, so that's a lot of like weird riders and stuff, and a lot of interesting abilities all put together. I think probably something that's easy to miss is whenever you're bouncing a land back to your hand with that second ability, you always have to have a target in your graveyard in order to activate it in the first place.
Yeah, you can't just do it to draw the card. Because
so,
that is one or more non-creature permanents returned to a hand. Draw a card. Now, you only draw a card once per turn, but when you do bounce your land for that second ability, you will draw a card.
Yeah, but you have to have that artifact or something in your graveyard in order to do so. So I think probably the best way to do that is have like Cheerios, 0 mana artifacts, like Mishra's Bauble, Lotus Petal.
You want stuff that sacrifices itself.
Yeah, Tormod's Crypt, so that you can get it back for 0 mana. You don't have to pay any mana into X. You just pay the 1 whites, and then you can get it back, use it for its thing, put it back into the graveyard, and then you can reuse it again next turn if you would like.
Yeah, even Lotus Petal is great because it pays...
Yeah, Lotus Petal is just a good card anyway.
Because X is equal to 0, so it just pays a white to draw a card, basically, and then you get the Lotus Petal back, and then you can just cast it again, right?
I mean, you are bouncing the land back to your
artifact onto the, or enchantment onto the battlefield,
yeah.
too, so... Yeah. Oh, yeah, you have to be aware of the downside of this, which is bouncing your own land to your hand. You don't get extra land drops.
Yeah.
So
because the blue and whites, it's a lot more difficult to do.
Yeah. So if you're not careful, that'll cost you. Yeah. There's got to be something with Lion's Eye Diamond. I know this is like a super expensive card, but it is a card that exists, and I was trying to figure out like some way to use it. I'm sure there is with Tameshi. So whatever. I won't spend a lot of time trying to break it, but I'm sure
there's got to be something.
Yeah. Artifact lands also work really well.
Yeah.
So if you've been able to get any artifact lands in your graveyard, and this deck's probably going to draw a lot of cards and have to discard a hand size and stuff, that always gives you a target, and that actually sort of mitigates the bouncing the land because it does put it directly into the battlefield.
Oh, that's true.
So you bounce a land to your hand, draw a card, but then you target a land in your graveyard because it's an artifact land to bring out onto the battlefield.
So you're just paying 1 white mana to draw a card, which is pretty good.
Yeah. Other artifacts, more artifacts that you might use. Spellskite seems pretty great to me, because it will protect your Tameshi and can be got back with Tameshi.
Oh yeah, pretty easily because it's only 2 mana.
Yep.
I like that.
Hope of Girapur, another one. It's a 1 mana flyer, but you can sacrifice it, and until your next turn, target player who was dealt combat damage by Hope of Girapur this turn can't cast non-creature spells. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, and it's only costs 1 to get back, and it sacks itself, right? So you hit him with it, sack it, then you can get it back at another point in time and use it that way.
So you just lock somebody out of casting.
It'll be tough. You need to give it haste to totally lock them out. But like every other turn or something, you could do that if you want.
Well, you hit them and then you sacrifice it and it does its thing, and then you activate the ability and then bring it back on the same turn. And so the next turn, then you attack them again. So,
if you're ever down to 1v1, I had somebody do this to me once, and they had a recursion ability with Hope of Girapur.
Oh, that's annoying.
And it was like down to 1v1, and they're like,
I got a border wipe in my hand, but I can't do anything with it.
And they did it every time, yeah. So I couldn't figure out a way to kill it, or to stop it from hitting me, and yeah.
Yeah, I like that include.
Mycosynth Lattice makes all your stuff artifacts in your graveyard, so any permanent can now be got back with Tameshi. So all lands now and anything. So that seems pretty good. Yeah.
There's plenty of combo potential with that as well, with the Mycosynth Lattice.
Gets pretty mean with like Strip Mine.
Yeah.
So I mean, you won't end up with a lot of lands in play either, but still.
It'll be funny.
Yeah, okay. This is gonna be a deck where you're gonna be able to hit landfall as much as you want, because you can very least always sort of bounce a land back to your hand and then play it again. And
you probably want to be putting as many extra lands into play as you can. There's not a ton that you can do in these colors, but you probably will be doing so.
So Felidar Retreat, Amiria Shepherd, Hedron Crab and Ruin Crab both seem really good. You mill yourself. You need more options in your graveyard for artifacts and enchantments that you could target.
Yep.
So that seems great. And then, like you said, there are not a lot of ways to put more lands into play in Azorius. So you should play the ones that you can. Yep. This is one of your favorites. Murph, you played on extra turns.
Yeah, Walking Atlas. It's an artifact creature, even though the artifact word does not appear on Walking Atlas. It's a construct you can tap. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So it helps with landfall. You just take a land from your hand. Doesn't have to be basic. You put it into play. Untapped. It's pretty good.
Really good with Tameshi because you're bouncing your own lands back to your hand. So you really want to get extra lands into play.
That way, as long as you have Walking Atlas in play, then you can just kind of mitigate.
You can at least bounce 1 per turn and stay even with what you would be. And also, it's an artifact which Tameshi can get back.
Yeah, that's very true.
Patron of the Moon is the big one. It's expensive. I mean, mana-wise, mana value. It's 5 blue for a 5/4 flyer. I'm not going to read the top part because it doesn't matter. It has activated ability of 1, put up to 2 land cards from your hand into play tapped.
So that can really help you mitigate that downside of your bouncing lands back to your hand. That way you can start bouncing multiple things back to your hand, bounce multiple lands back, get multiple things back, but then you don't have to worry about it. You pay a mana, put a couple lands back into play, and you're good to go.
And then I thought Amulet of Vigor is actually perfect in this deck.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be doing things like Patron of the Moon, Walking Atlas. You might play some tap lands, things like that. You just don't... Tap lands will hurt you a lot more because you're liable to play the same land a few times.
Yeah, you're losing that tempo.
We're going to talk a second about bounce lands too, which also come in tapped. So I think Amulet of Vigor, I don't like it in a lot of decks. I think people play it a little bit too much.
Oh, I just realized. Patron of the Moon has Moonfolk Offering, and Tameshi is a Moonfolk.
Oh my god.
So the Moonfolk Offering
it actually matters
on Patron of the Moon.
Oh.
I've never seen that happen before.
All right, I'll read Moonfolk. So Patron of the Moon says, Moonfolk Offering, you may play this card anytime you could play an instant by sacrificing a Moonfolk and paying the difference in mana cost between this and the sacrificed Moonfolk. Mana cost includes color. So
if you sacrifice your commander, you can pay 4 mana and flash it out.
Yeah.
That's
Which
not the worst.
Maybe you would do just, I don't know.
I mean, then you
Seems unlikely.
Then you ramp lands and then you recast your commander.
Sure.
Maybe. I don't know.
You might get into a point where, like, you have so many lands in hand that it's worth doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to Amulet of Vigor, which allows whenever a permanent enters the battlefield tapped under your control, untap it. So that's why I think with tap lands and stuff, it could be good.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about more bounce, because Tameshi doesn't actually care if you bounce the things you're bouncing with its own effect.
Yeah.
And it actually, you can bounce opponents' things and still draw the cards, because it says whenever one or more non-creature permanents are returned to hand, anybody's hand, draw a card. So you draw, not them.
Yep.
You can only do it once per turn, but you still probably want to run Chain of Vapor, which is just a 1 mana instant that return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Mm-hmm. Then that permanent's controller may sacrifice a land. If the player does, he or she may copy this spell and may choose a new target for that copy. They almost never do. I've never actually seen anybody sacrifice the land and do the bounce before. So you just bounce a non-land permanent back to their hand, draw a card with Tameshi. You could go big and go Hullbreaker Horror.
Oh, that's nuts.
So anytime you cast a spell, you can return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, or return target spell you don't control to its owner's hand. Yeah. Ether Spellbomb is actually, I think, really good in this deck.
Oh, yeah, because it's an artifact.
It's an artifact.
You can't get that back.
Yeah, 1 mana artifact, and you pay a blue, sack it, and return target creature to its owner's hand. So you would then put that in your graveyard, draw a card because you bounce something, and then it's sitting there in graveyard as a target for Tameshi's second ability,
and
which can
get
then
that back.
Yeah, get that back, which I think is pretty good.
Yeah, because the ability triggers only once each turn, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's interesting. So it could be on your opponent's turn. Obviously, you can only activate the second ability at sorcery speed, but it could be kind of cool.
Yeah, that's why you want to, I think, play Chain of Vapor and Aether Spellbomb, because you're going to draw a card on your turn through the activated ability, hopefully most of the time.
Yeah.
But being able to draw additional cards on the other player's turns is pretty big. I think bounce is also just underrated in EDH.
Yeah.
I think people don't think of it as removal, but it really is, and it's not functionally that different than a lot of like graveyard removal spells, because most of the time people have ways to get things back out of the graveyard.
Not only that, but there's a lot of things that'll say return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, and that is like a catch-all for basically everything. You got a problematic enchantment, artifact, creature, it doesn't matter. You have an answer to that in your hand.
Also, a lot of people, they think ahead and they're like, I give it indestructible or whatever, and bounce doesn't care about certain things like that. So it can get around a lot of the protection they put on it. I had a question. Do you think you play Boomerang? Does it become good enough? So it's blue, return target permanent to its owner's hand. If that says draw a card, does that become playable?
I think I probably do.
Yeah,
right.
Like permanent too.
Blue, return target permanent. You can get rid of anything you want. You can get a land.
Yep.
You can bounce a land, and then you just draw a card. So I think, you probably have like an artifact or enchantment recursion engine in this deck, and then your suite of removal spells just ends up being like return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand or something like that.
Because every time you remove something, you're going to draw a card to replace it.
Yeah.
So.
Or you could skew way towards that side and just have like bounce.deck. That's also a way you could go.
I would be reticent to bounce too many of my own lands, so probably not going to want to do that all the time.
Yeah.
So it's probably more, for me, if I were going to play it, I think I would play it more along the side of, I'm bouncing a lot of my opponent's stuff and drawing cards.
Because bouncing, the inherent disadvantage is, well, now you're down a card, they still have that card in their hand. It's a temporary fix. It's still quite good, but now with Tameshi, you draw a card, so you do get to replace that, and that kind of like counteracts the downside.
And now you're really up, because most of the time bouncing it costs 1 or 2 mana, and they spent 5+ mana on the thing.
Yeah.
So you do that 3 or 4 times, and you can be like a full turn ahead of everybody just to how much mana they've wasted compared to you.
Yep.
Bounce land's obviously really good with this because, you're going to get your land drop as normal, but still draw a card off it. So imagine Azorius Chancery or Guildless Commons just says draw a card.
That seems pretty good.
Pretty good. Aboro, Palace in the Clouds, is another one that's really good because it's a legendary land. You can tap it for blue, but it says pay 1, return Aboro to its owner's hand.
So you don't have to have an artifact or enchantment in your graveyard. You don't have to activate that ability. You can just pay 1, boop, bounce it back to your hand.
And you can do that on your opponent's turn, so
Correct.
You're looking for stuff with TAMESHI, because I think drawing a card on your turn is not going to be hard.
Yeah.
Drawing on the opponent's will be a little bit tougher. You put the classic now?
Classic. Let's
Combo.
go with classic.
Yeah, so there's Mystic Sanctuary is a land, and it combos with a certain class of card. Why don't you read Mystic Sanctuary?
Yeah, so Mystic Sanctuary is a land... it just taps for blue. The important part is when it enters the battlefield untapped, you may put target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard on top of your library. So probably what you want to do is extra turn spells, Time Warp, Temporal Manipulation. You play that card, you get an extra turn. Then you bounce Mystic Sanctuary back to your hand.
With TAMESHI's ability.
You play the Mystic Sanctuary again, and then you put Temporal Manipulation or Time Warp on top of your deck. Go to your extra turn. You draw that as your card for turn.
Cast it.
Bounce
Bounce your Mystic Sanctuary.
and repeat.
Yeah. You have to watch out because it only works with extra turn spells that go to your graveyard a lot.
Yes.
Either shuffle in or...
Exile.
Yeah.
I think they've gotten a lot more careful with that more recently.
Because of this.
Because of things like this, yeah.
Yeah, TAMESHI seems quite powerful.
Yeah. And I like the different swath of abilities I'll put on the same card, so you can push it in very different directions.
We got 2 more to go. We are almost there, Murph.
Doing great. All right, so next we got Tatsunari, Toad Rider, 2 and a black, legendary creature, human ninja. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, if you don't control a creature named Kemi, create Kemi, a legendary 3/3 black and green frog creature token with, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. It also has 1 hybrid blue-green, so it's actually a Sultai commander. Tatsunari and target frog you control can't be blocked this turn except by creatures with flying or reach.
So this is the deck that Jimmy built and plays on the next episode of Game Nights for Neon Dynasty. Yeah, I like that last part, the flavor of it, because Toad Rider and the Toad and Tatsunari will jump into the air and become hard to block.
Yep.
This is a Sultai enchantment deck. We haven't seen a lot of Sultai enchantment themed stuff. So it's Enchantress plus black. Enchantress is a known thing. We won't go over. Yes, play Enchantress's Presence, Sanctum Weaver, blah, blah, blah. The real compelling part of this is, like, what does black add to the equation here?
And in this case, it's like drain and creatures dying, right?
Yeah, there's some constellation too, though. So Doomwake Giant.
Oh, yeah. I love Doomwake.
Yeah, whenever a Doomwake Giant or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, creatures your opponent's control get -1, -1. That's a really powerful addition to any Enchantress deck. Thoughtrender Lamia is whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent discards a card.
I play that card.
Brutal. Grim Guardian is just another Toad, another Kemi. When an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life. Another way for that to kind of add up. And then, yeah, black has all the aristocrats, I guess, for lack of a better term, payoffs. And they're mostly enchantments. Meat Hook Massacre, Bastion of Remembrance, Dictate of Erebos. And this made me think of a name for this deck, actually.
Aristode Cracks.
Aristode Cracks. So... yeah, Kami is great to sacrifice because it comes back.
Yes. The next time you play another enchantment, it will come right back.
So Phyrexian Ashnod's Altar, you sack it to get the mana to play an enchantment, which brings another copy of it into play. You found a really cool card that I've never even heard of before called Blood Funnel. You want to read that?
Yeah. So Blood Funnel is 1 and a black enchantment. None-creature spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, counter that spell unless you sacrifice a creature. Well, guess what? You're always going to have that sack fodder.
Yep.
In the Toad.
Yep. So you get to sack it and then make another Toad. There's interesting things we think you can do with Shimmering Wings and Rancor.
Yeah, just the enchantments that can, like, bounce back to your hand.
Yeah, you have to get a little tricky with having another creature and then sacking it. Rancor goes to the graveyard, comes back to your hand, cast it again, sacking Kami in between there with some Ashnod's Altar and stuff. But because they're recursive and you can sack the Toad for the mana to cast it, you probably get into some loops there.
Yep.
Oh, I was saying Elemental Bond seems like it's really, really good because every time you
true.
sack...
It's power 3.
Yeah, so every time you sack the Toad, it's going to come back and you're going to draw a card every time because Kami is a 3 power creature. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's an enchantment. You had a really interesting card, which is Echoing Equation.
Oh, yeah. So Echoing Equation, you can choose target creature you control. Each other creature you control becomes a copy of that, except they aren't legendary. Remember, Kemi is a legendary creature, so you usually can't copy it. But with Echoing Equation, you can. So all of a sudden, all the creatures on your board can become Kemi. And then you cast a couple of enchantments, and suddenly you're doing massive amounts of damage.
Yeah, instead of draining for 1, you're draining for 5.
Yeah.
You know?
So just string
a couple, yeah.
Yeah, string a couple enchantments together, and like you're golden. You're just doming people for a ton.
Yeah, so I think Tatsunari is pretty cool, and I like the idea of an Enchantress in Sultai.
Yeah.
Yeah, that just has its own little take. It's got some similarities, but I think there'll be enough differences that it won't feel stale.
I like that they added the creatures dying part on top of it.
All right, we got one more to go. We're almost there.
All right.
Yoshimaru, Ever Faithful. It's 1 white mana for a 1/1. Legendary creature dog.
What?
It's hanging out with Channing Tatum, evidently.
Nice.
I do want to note this is available only in set boosters.
Yeah.
Whenever another legendary permanent enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on Yoshimaru, Ever Faithful. Now, why are we talking about a mono white commander? Because it has partner.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
I believe this one is also only in the set boosters, but this one does have partner, so almost certainly you're going to be pairing it with another color to add just more colors to the deck.
We debated whether we should talk about it as multicolored or not, and we figured, most of the time it's going to end up being a multicolored deck that it's in, so we'll talk about it in this episode.
Yeah.
Legendary matters, obviously, for this one, so legendary lands become quite good. Gaia Reach Sanitarium, Hall of the Bandit Lord, Oboro is quite good because you bounce it and play it to give more counters to Yoshimaru, especially when you pair with green so that you can play extra lands per turn. Yoshimaru could get pretty big pretty fast. Neon Dynasty has a new cycle of legendary lands with the channel mechanic on it, so there's even more legendary lands you can play around with. There's also things like Black Blade Reforged, which is a legendary artifact. Shadow Spear, legendary equipment. Mox Amber, legendary artifact. Also won't be able to be activated unless you have a legendary creature, which Yoshimaru is.
Yeah, so you'll usually have that online.
Yep. So who do we think are the sort of the best pairs with Yoshimaru? Who would partner the best with it? We picked 2 here.
Yeah, so I kind of like Rogue Rock, which is the 0 mana goblin dude. Scream is very funny.
You can have 2 commanders out on turn 1.
That's pretty funny. I love that.
Make sure to sequence right. Play Yoshimaru first and then Rogue Rock so you get the 1/1 counter.
Yeah. So then you automatically have the cards that care about having your commander on the battlefield online, like Deflecting Swat, Flawless Maneuver, Loyal Apprentice, heck, even Juska's Will or something like that.
Yeah, you get automatic access to those cards that say if you have your commander in play, you get some sort of benefit.
Yeah.
Deflecting Swat's sweet, just having it this early.
It's pretty good. But also you get the Storm cards from like C18, I think. So Fury Storm says whenever you cast this spell, copy it. For each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this game, you may choose new targets for the copy, and it copies and target instant or sorcery spell.
And it'll add up both partners?
It will, yeah.
And because they're so cheap, you could easily have them both die, cast them both again, and then when you cast Fury Storm, you copy something 4 times.
Yeah, you probably are casting them a total of 4 times before you're going to be casting a Fury Storm or one of the storms.
Yeah, Imperial Storm's another one, makes 4/4 Angels for the number of times you cast your commanders.
Seems pretty good.
Commander's Insignia. Your creatures get +1/+1 for each time you cast your commander for the command zone.
Oh, that's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, so we also wanted to mention that it's good with Ragavan. Just because Ragavan's 1-drop and also legendary.
Or, hear me out, you play Kari Zev. So it'll buff your little dog dude over here.
And then it goes away and you do it again next turn.
Exactly. We broke it.
I think I'd still rather have the other Ragavan.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, you can have both because they're different casting costs.
True.
Or you could pair Yoshimaru with Raihan.
Yeah.
Of the Last of the Abzan, which is a +1/+1 counter synergy deck, more so than probably the Rogue Rock version is. Mm-hmm. And this is, we're not going to go over this very much because this is a known quantity as far as decks with Abzan +1/+1 counters. You know, you're going to run Hardened Scales, Winding Constrictor, the Ozolith, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that is kind of, I think, probably how that deck goes.
Probably just going to have like a little bit heavier on the legendary theme.
Yeah.
But it'll look pretty similar to normal Abzan counters matters decks.
I like how you put the Acererak combo. So either Acererak with Allurin, Infinite Black Mana, Omniscience, Rooftop Storm.
Yep.
makes Yoshimaru infinitely large.
Yes, because
It also-
all I want out of life is to attack with an infinitely large
Dog.
good doggo, and one-shot my opponents.
Never mind that if you have infinite ventures into the dungeon, you probably don't need that.
Nope, I want to attack with my dog.
All right, Murph, we went through 15 new legendary creatures from Neon Dynasty. That's all the multicolored ones. Before we wrap it up here, and it's been long, so we're going to get there fast, who do you think is the most powerful new multicolored commander? Most powerful, not your favorite.
Most powerful?
The strongest.
I think I'm going to go with Hinata. GO-SHINTAI is very powerful, but I think it's just going to, helm a lot of decks, and you'll see a lot of it. But I think Hinata's probably just, at base level, a lot more powerful. Because I think it could be, CEDH playable, and it just does a lot. It does so much. It hinders your opponents from removing your stuff, and it makes your removal, your counter spells, everything, just so much cheaper.
Yeah, it's very powerful. I agree, because it's making the stuff that's already really powerful better.
Yeah.
So that's probably, I think, going to be a little better than the Shrine Commander, which I think will be strong, but, the enchantment decks are not currently, crazy strong, and I don't see a Shrine deck being insane.
I mean, we'll definitely see more of the Shrine Commander for sure,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, it seems more fun. I'm going to say Satoru.
Yeah.
I think that card is quite powerful, has a lot of combo potential as well.
Totally makes sense.
What is your favorite, your personal favorite? What does the MTG hipster think is the coolest new?
ISSHIN. It's not that hipster, but man, oh man, all the cool stuff you can do with the creatures attacking. Doesn't have to be your creatures, just as long as a permanent you control cares about creatures attacking. There's so much fun stuff that you can do with this card. I think that's probably my favorite of these multicolored.
ISSHIN looks pretty cool. Why do you say it's not that hipster?
Why it's not that hipster?
You're like, it's not that hipster.
I don't know. It's not
I don't
that
know
weird.
what's the quality that makes something hipster.
Probably bad. If it's bad, it's probably hipster.
I think TAMESHI is the one I'm going to choose as my favorite.
There's a lot of different paths you can go with it, right?
Yeah, as I was, as we were talking about and we were adding cards to the thing, I was like, that sounds fun. So maybe I'll build this one.
Nice.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of juggling to be done with when you bounce your lands and how you handle that too. So a lot of thinking involved.
Yeah, I have no idea how good that card is. I definitely need to see that in play because there's a lot of weird riders on it, activate only as a sorcery.
Yeah.
This thing only once per turn.
It'll be interesting to see what kind of sequencing you can get into that makes it powerful or not. It might be really hard because if I do that, I only have 2 lands in play though.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. To the listeners, what new commander are you the most excited to build? What sweet tech do you think we didn't talk about in this episode? Tell us in the comments on Twitter. Let us know. We always like to hear from everybody out there. And then, of course, if you are interested in getting your hands on any of the cards we talked about today, channelfireball.com/command is the place to go to get that stuff. They're going to have the best prices because their marketplace causes their vendors to be competing with each other and bringing the prices down low, especially since all of those vendors are licensed businesses. They're LGS. They have really good prices on sealed product. If you want to get a set booster, a collector's booster, anything at all like that, it really is a great time to be doing it. And channelfireball.com/command is the best place to go. And of course, any of the cards we talked about that go in the decks, they have a full-on marketplace, so their card inventory is their card inventory is really big, so you can get singles there too. And then, of course, once you get that stuff, make sure you protect it. Don't mess around. UltraPro makes the products that we here at the Command Zone trust our own collections too, to make sure that they stay safe, they stay in pristine condition. You want to get if you get the Satoru Commander and you build that, then you want this sweet playmat I've got in front of me.
So
you
cool.
want the awesome Satoru sleeves and deck box. Make sure that whole battlefield is all decked out because that really does look cool. And anytime somebody does that, I have one deck where I can do that with. And every time I do, I feel just like, it's like when you dress up. It's like when you dress up for a nice night out.
You feel fancy.
You just feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So make sure you check out UltraPro products. We're going to skip the end step because this episode is freaking long.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Big thanks to our amazing team here at the Command Zone: Arthur Meadowcroft, Shauna Gillis, Damon Lenz, Lady Danger, Aaron Manson Lung, Craig Blanchett, Ashlyn Rose, Josh Murphy, Jake Boss, Patrick Nan, Jordan Pridgeon, Sam Waldo, Grav Galati, Truck Ty, Jamie Block, Evan Limburger, and Mitch Trafford.
This list gets longer every single time I do
and
this.
Jimmy Wong, let us not forget. He's not here. He doesn't get enough shout outs. All right. And a special thanks to Jeffrey Palmer for the living card animations that begin and end our show, and also sometimes sit behind us. He did do this animation of Days. You can find Jeffrey on Twitter at LivingCardsMTG. All right, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us for this long episode. Hope you see some cards from Neon Dynasty that you are excited about. And we got a lot more set review stuff coming up, so make sure you hit that subscribe button.
See ya.
Peace.
attention. For further inquiries, send an email to commandcast@rocketjump.com or ask us on Twitter @JFWong and @JoshLeeQuai. See you later, alligator.
Greetings, humans.